Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the Astrology of August 2023. I hope that you're doing well out there and having a nice Friday afternoon, relaxing on this lovely summer afternoon, wherever you're at, or morning or evening, wherever you're at in the world. Hope that you're having a good time and that life is treating you well. We're going to be going on a journey here for a number of hours, going over the big picture, the details, and everything in between. So thank you for joining us here today. Please let me know that you are here. If you are with me live today, let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. And we will try to connect in the best way that we can. See, my friend Susanna is here from Finland. Hello, Susanna. Rose T is here. Nice to see you, Rose. How you doing? And more friends are going to be stopping in as we go along. Before we get into the details, do me a huge favor. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell, and subscribe to the newsletter. I've been doing a lot of creative things in the newsletter, as well as keeping you up to date on new offerings that I have or when I go live. The kind of the things that are in the hopper right now, I do have a sale going on. This is the last day, potentially, the last day of the Decans of Cancer sale. So if you are trying to get 20% off of my Decans webinar with the Cancer season, today's your last day. And the Decans of Leo is now officially on sale as well. So you can get 20% off these Decan webinars. These are webinars that go into each 10-degree section of a sign, but it's kind of a deep dive with mythology, tarot, fixed stars, all sorts of cool things in there. They're about 3 hours long each, and I put a lot of heart and soul into those, so if you want to support the channel, that's a great way to do that. Luna Storm 23 is here. How you doing, friend? Nice to see you. What else do we got going on here? Of course, I'm always available for readings. If you want to reach out and schedule a reading, you can find that at spencermichaud.com. I also was a guest on my good friend Melissa LaFara's channel, Energetic Principles. So check out Melissa LaFara. We talked about Leo season, and we had a nice chat with one another and maybe a couple different takes. We'll talk about some of that today, but we had a really nice talk, and it's nice to support our friends as well. So check her out also. Rachel Fletcher is joining us from Road Oak, Virginia. Hello, Rachel. Nice to see you. KP1231 is here from Cleveland, Ohio. Nice to see you and your little mushroom icons. Very cool. Carol from Mass is here. Hello, Carol. Nice to see you. Nanda Devi says Happy Venus Day. Welcome, Nanda Devi. Hope you're doing well. Cosmo Shiva Galaxina says we're here. We're queer. Nice. Okay. I believe that is our friend Yevgen. Nice to see you, friend, and hope you're doing well. Yeah, I saw a really cool documentary last night I wanted to share from Wham. You remember the band Wham from the 80s? Like George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley. Really, really interesting stuff. I really enjoyed George Michael's music and all of the, I don't know, his evolution as an artist and things of that nature. It was really well done. It just goes over the time that they met as kids to like the end of their run together as, you know, musical partners, which they were only like 23 years old when George Michael like went solo. And like, so Wham was like, they met when they were 11, and then they went a full Jupiter cycle, 12 years together, and then went their separate ways. But it's just so amazing to me, all the impact that some of these prodigious artists had when they were so young. It just is mind-blowing to me. But check that out. Like I said, I'm a huge George Michael fan, and I hope that you will check him out. Yeah, Luna Storm says, I love that documentary. It was really good. I thought it was well done. It was uplifting. It didn't get into a ton of some of the challenging aspects of maybe George Michael's career that came after Wham, but it was really inspiring to see their rise to fame and kind of the support and love that they had for one another. Especially how, I don't know, almost selfless Andrew Ridgeley was as well. Watching George Michael kind of turn from a shy kid into this pop megastar. So I recommend it. That's my Netflix pick of the week. Uh, so I might have to start putting some TV choices in the newsletter as well. I've been doing a song of the week. This week's song of the week was a Childish Gambino song called "Feels Like Summer" from 2018, which is I really enjoy that song. It's got a nice laid back groove to it, but also a powerful message as well. I did want to make a correction to something I put in the newsletter not too long ago. This is probably not going to matter to anybody but the Virgo detailed people. But when I did share my George Michael song of the week, which was One More Try, which I highly recommend, a couple weeks ago, I accidentally ran his chart one day after his birthday. So the chart would say that he has a Virgo moon, but he in fact has a Leo moon, third decan Leo, which we're going to talk about today, especially because of the Venus retrograde that we're going to be experiencing in the third decan of Leo. So minor correction. He was born on June 25th, 1963, not June 26th. So we always want to make sure that we're correct and we admit our mistakes. Okay. So what are we going to talk about today besides music documentaries, Leo moons, Venus retrogrades, etc.? Yeah, Susanna says, I love One More Try. One of my favorite jams was just, watching that documentary last night really kind of gave me the music itch a little bit. I think just he has such a pure voice. I miss singing, I miss playing guitar, so that might be part of my Venus retrograde journey, is how to reconnect with some of my musical endeavors on some level. I'm going to turn my air conditioner back on here. Sorry, friends. There's a little bit of background noise, but it is getting steamy hot. Loretta is joining us from Vancouver, USA. Goodbye, Cancer season. Hello, Leo. Nice. Okay. So, friends, we're going to go over big picture thoughts for August. We're going to go over all of the lunations and what I consider lunations on this channel: full moons, new moons, and quarter moons. There are, of course, other phases that you can track, but I feel like those are good sign points or signposts for our lunation cycle. We have 2 full moons in August, which is really interesting. We have a full moon on the first day of August at 9 degrees of Aquarius. We have a last quarter at 15 degrees of Taurus on the 8th of August, a new moon at 23 degrees of Leo on the 16th, a first quarter at 1 degree of Sagittarius once the sun, has moved into Virgo on the 24th. And then we have the second full moon of the month on August 30th at 7 degrees of Pisces, opposing 7 degrees Virgo sun. So those are the lunations we're going to be looking at. We also talk about ingresses on this channel. An ingress is a fancy word for a planet moving into a new sign. Only 2 ingresses this month, which is interesting. So the sun will be moving into Virgo, out of its domicile in Leo that we're going to have the sun in for most of the month on the 23rd. And then Mars is going to be moving into its exile in Libra on the 27th. So a couple changes there where those 2 planets are going to be losing some dignity. One from the sun being in its own domicile, and then, Mars being in a place that it doesn't really have its own dignity there, but it's not debilitated, and it will be slightly debilitated when it goes into the sign of Libra. So we'll talk about that. We'll unpack that. It's not a death sentence or anything. It just means that Mars activities will be a little bit outside the norm and might not be functioning as they normally would. Solar phases. This is something we talk about here, the relationship of a planet to the sun, where it's synodic cycle. So these are things like Cazimis, planets emerging from under the beams or going under the beams of the sun, planets turning retrograde or stationing direct. There's going to be a number of those this month. So it's fitting that in the sort of the month of the sun with the Leo sun, that we have a lot of solar phases that we're going to be chatting about here. So on August the 3rd, we have Venus retrograde moving under the beams of the sun. So we're going to start the month out with Venus retrograde, which happens tomorrow. As I'm recording this on July the 21st, it's going to retrograde on July 22nd. So we'll break that down. We'll talk about that. We'll give you some tips and tricks for surviving and thriving during that period of time. But it'll go under the beams of the sun at 25 degrees of Leo. So that's when things, Venus ruled things may fall into the background, go behind the scenes, where Venus may have a little bit more difficulty working through some of her own significations, like harmonizing and peacemaking. On the 13th, Venus is renewed in the heart of the sun. The retrograde Venus is conjoining the sun at 20 degrees of Leo, which is also called a cazimi. And that's where Venus kind of gets a new start. All the dross is burned away, and we maybe get some downloads about what our next Venus cycle is all about. Venus is going to station direct on September the 3rd at 12 degrees of Leo. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, what's this Venus retrograde's rough. Like there's hope on the horizon in the beginning of September. Mercury is also going to station retrograde at 21 degrees of Virgo on the 23rd of August. That's a big day. We've got the sun moving into Virgo. We've got Mercury stationing retrograde. We've got Venus emerging as the morning star just as Mercury stations retrograde. So what that means is that Venus is going to be becoming visible once again and rising before the sun. So more of an active Venus, like where we're trying to create peace through our actions rather than just letting things come to us. We might be more actively trying to advocate for the things that could bring us together with others. So that's happening at 14 degrees of Leo on the 23rd. Mercury retrograde is going to go under the beams of the sun on the 28th of August at 20 degrees of Virgo. And it will have its cazimi on September the 6th at 13 degrees of Virgo. So keep that in mind as well. Mercury is not going to be as challenged as Venus during this cycle because it is in its own domicile and exaltation. And there is a Hellenistic technique called being under the chariot, where usually a planet is sort of, burned up by the heat and the rays of the sun when it's under the beams and invisible, when sort of being harmed. It was a condition of being harmed by the sun. But when a planet is in its own domicile exaltation, and sometimes some authors say triplicity or possibly even face, that's not totally clear. But this Mercury definitely is protected from the worst qualities of being under the beams of the sun. So we may be able to do a lot of hermetic work behind the scenes that could be just as effective as it would have been otherwise because of its dignity. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And then finally on August 28th, the same day as Mercury goes under the beams, Uranus is going to station retrograde at 23 degrees of Taurus all the way, and is going to stay retrograde until it stations direct at 19 Taurus on the 27th of January, 2024. Okay. So those are the solar phases. And of course, we talk about out of bounds planets here, and we just have lunar out of bounds time frames in this month. Moon's going to be out of bounds starting on August 1st. It will then go out of bounds again from August 9th to August 14th, and then finally from August 24th to August 28th. So that's kind of the big picture. And we'll go through it day by day, decan by decan. I'll share some of my decan slides for you. And we'll go on a little bit of a journey. Okay, let's see. I'm looking through in the chat. Loretta's here from Vancouver. Oh yes, I already got that one. Nanda Debbie says, forgot to hit the play button. Is that you or me? I hope that I hit the play button. You're obviously here, so I think we're doing okay. Okay. So, how are you all doing out there? Do you survive Cancer season? We are in the middle of a Sun-Pluto opposition this afternoon, and we're coming off a Mars-Saturn opposition as I'm recording this. So some opposing energies at the end of this week, but it's about to shift. The energy is about to shift, and we'll have a whole new story that's going to be unfolding for us during Leo season. Caitlin, Art and Spirit is here. Caitlin from Oregon. Thanks for the forecast, Spencer. And thank you, Caitlin. I think you are the lovely person who sent me this tarot deck to look at. So I appreciate that, friend. I got that in the mail, and we'll be in touch. I appreciate you sending that along, and I'll do my best to share my thoughts, and hopefully we'll have a good collaboration with that. Carolyn Perkins is here in Carmel Valley, California. Nice to see you, Carolyn. Thank you for joining us again, friend. Got a nice letter from you not too long ago. I appreciate you sending that along in the mail as well. I've been getting a lot of snail mail lately, which I enjoy. I enjoy getting snail mail. My friend Robert from Kalamazoo sent me a nice little thing in the mail as well, so I appreciate that. We'll have to talk some Detroit Lions football, Robert, and thanks for the chai tea. Appreciate that. And yeah, so what else are we gonna do here today? So Leo season, right? Leo season. Leo season is interesting because this year Leo season is coinciding with a number of these planets in Leo, squaring Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus. The good news is, from a larger perspective, a big picture perspective, is that Jupiter is in the overcoming position to all of these Leo planets. Now, in Hellenistic astrology, even though we have a square, when Jupiter is in, it's said to be on the 10th house away from a planet. If it's a benefic, that can really be a positive force for good, protection. If it's a malefic in the 10th house square, that's a problem. But in this case, we have a benefic planet in an overcoming square to the Leo planets, which gives us a little bit of protection. Now, the issue that we have is Uranus. They're kind of shaking things up, shaking up our routines, shaking up our ability to be resilient in the forces of nature in particular, and encouraging us to take responsibility for and to make amends for maybe mistakes we might have made in the past. And they may not be our fault personally, but we're still dealing with the greater ramifications of those things. I've been talking a lot about climate change on this channel. I would also, I would think about this almost in climate crisis. I might have to change the way I talk about this. We're not just dealing with climate change. We are in the middle of climate crisis right now. And as we move into Leo season, in the Northern Hemisphere, places get really hot. We're in the middle of heat waves. We're in the middle of extreme storms. We're in the middle of all the consequences of our actions for a number of years. So we're going to have to build that into our astrology of August, because it's only going to get hotter in various places. And we have to deal with that reality and how we stay healthy and how we build in our ability to adjust to change and the things that we can do to empower ourselves to hopefully create a better future. Last time I did a live stream, I was trying to focus on positive things that we could do. I had some really nice suggestions in the chat, one of which I didn't think of that I was reminded of by a really nice person and comment in the chat was, I was talking a lot about, not using chemicals on your lawn, like maybe removing your lawn for pollinator habitats and things like that, which we're in the process of doing at my home, and which is an easy thing to do, to stop using, I'm going to get this wrong, like Tanya's going to get on my case, but glyphosate, sorry, it's Roundup. So I don't know, I always mix up the syllables in that, but it's poison. And a lot of the times we get attached to doing what we've always done, and we want things to look nice and things like that. But I had a really nice suggestion in the chat, because some people were having difficulties with releasing their lawns for the purposes of like children playing or something like that. First of all, let me address that. You don't want your kids playing on toxic chemicals. So I think that we all can agree on that. But second of all, there are things that you can do where you can have a lawn-like experience without the types of turf that are sucking up water and resources and really aren't doing anything good for the planet. And one of the things that's really easy, that's a great idea, was replacing your lawn with clover. So this is a really practical thing that you can do. There's mini white Dutch clover, there's regular Dutch clover, there's all sorts of clover that it looks like grass. It stays green during a drought. It requires much less water. It will actually flower for the bees, and there are varieties of it that stay very low to the ground, and it holds up well to foot traffic. So I thought that was a really great solution and a really nice suggestion for a compromise for the people that are trying to figure out how to do something for their community, for the birds and the bees and for the pollinators, but are still wanting to maybe do it in a way that allows you to enjoy your space as well. Stella says glyphosate. There you go. Is that how we do it? Sorry, I mix up the syllables sometimes, but yes, regardless, that stuff needs to go. We get attached to it but it is something that is causing a lot of problems for a lot of people, a lot of sickness, it's killing off a lot of wildlife. It's getting into our water supply. It's getting into our bodies. It's no good for anybody. And like I said, there are solutions where you can have a similar experience to a super green lawn that is much better for the environment. Okay, Stella rendition. Yeah, thank you for that, Stella. Happy to make the live. Nice to see you, friend. Okay, so that being said, it's because we have a continuing narrative that we're going to continue to talk about as we move forward into the air age, which we can define as the coming together of Saturn and Jupiter in the air signs moving forward, which are going to require us to make changes to our values, make changes to the way that we do things. It's just change is one of the things I've been trying to tell myself lately, as we're all going through some challenges to getting used to how things are going to be moving forward. But when we flow with those changes, like swimming with the current, and we start to stop resisting the changes that need to happen, we exhaust ourselves a lot less, and we can kind of go with the flow, and nature shows us the way. So I think that that's something to consider as we move forward through August. Lauren Daniel is here. Nice to see you. Lauren says, my sister has let the clover overtake her lawn softer, and the bees love it. Yes. We need to sing the praises of clover lawns here, Lauren. Susanna says, vote to clover. Roundup causes bad things to frogs and other creatures. Amen, Susanna. I absolutely agree. And we will try to focus on solutions here. I'm going to talk about some of the problems. As you know, I'm a realist, right? But I love the turnaround. And we'll try to give each other actionable things that we can do that really, when you think about it, they really can bring us joy, because we know that we're contributing something to the greater whole. And it's beautiful. Like, I've been going out in my backyard lately, looking at all the areas that I cleared for wildflowers that are starting to bloom. And I had tiger swallowtail in the yard the other day. It was gorgeous. It just made me so happy. And there's just this potpourri of color. So, being able to do that hard work and then just enjoy the beauty of it makes it so worth it to me. And the fact that it is a eucatastrophe, a good catastrophe for these birds and these butterflies and creatures and insects, some kind of like oasis for them, it makes it that much better. So thank you, friends, for these suggestions. Okay, so let's talk about the sun. So the sun is the planet that rules Leo. And as I'm recording this, the sun's going to be moving into Leo tomorrow, the 22nd, which is its home domicile. And the sun, I'll pull up this webinar for you, just to give you a little taste of the decans of Leo, and it'll help us to break down the sun. So here we see some of I'll just talk about here. So here is the sun, right? It's related to spirit, daimon, these are all significations from Hellenistic authors and various authors over the astrological tradition. Nature's fire and intellectual light, kingship, royalty, nobility, the head, the right eye, the heart, the power and the force of will. Visibility, so this is important. I think whenever we talk about the sun in a certain decan, it's shining a big spotlight on something that we may be experiencing as a collective, right? So this is something where we're probably going to be getting some clarity on something that is important to us moving forward. Prophecy. This was another signification related to both Helios and Apollo in particular. Vitality, the animating life force, honor, merit, and reputation. It is the solar king to the lunar queen in these ancient philosophical models. It also reflects selection and centrality. Now, this is something that we have to work through as we work towards a more equitable society, but the sun did represent an individual point of consciousness, an individual point of power within the collective, which is still valid even though we're trying to make changes to the way that we arrange our society. So we all want to be able to retain some personal sovereignty, some individuality as we work towards collective goals. So I like Joy Usher's work from A Tiny Universe. I'm just going to read one of her quotes here. It says, Leo differs from all of these signs by its link to a symbolic sun. And this means that Leo can go through phases or seasons similar to the physical sun. Like the puppet that takes on the characteristics of its puppeteer, so too can Leo echo the sun's season as it passes through its yearly pattern. I think that's really fascinating, especially if we have Leo placements, that we may be going through seasonal changes, much like some of these other phases that other planets and other signs go through. So we're in the height of summer. We're in the height of visibility right now. So if you have Leo placements, you might be feeling like this is a very fertile, visible, clear time. And it's time to make the most of your opportunities, right? Even though we have some planets turning retrograde, which we'll talk about, this may be a time to shine your light, to become visible, to share your authenticity. I think authenticity is a key word with the sun and with Leo in particular as well. Just going through the chat here. Oh, we got someone who had a bad ad for Roundup the other day. Yeah, I was walking through Lowe's, which is not my favorite place to go, like home. It's sort of a home goods store in America if you don't have one where you're at. And they had a table set up for like lawn chemicals, and there was this person that was trying to shill lawn chemicals at the garden center store, and he took one look at me and saw how much anger I was radiating and didn't even bother to talk to me, which I think was smart on his case. I think he had a sixth sense that I was about to like lay into him about how toxic that stuff was. So, you know, without getting into a conflict at my local Lowe's, like it's just kind of funny how the salesman picked up on it. And I know on some level he's probably just doing his job, but I do think we need to kind of start having those conversations more publicly. Bonnie is here. Hello, Bonnie. Says, nice to catch you live. Hello from Santa Monica, unceded Tongva territory. Happy hazy beach day. All right, well, welcome, friend. So let's talk a little bit. You can look at all of these stories that we're going to be talking about with Leo on my Decans webinar. But let's go and I'll show you kind of the progression that we're going to be going through as we move through Leo season. And we have Leo season syncretized with the 5, 6, and 7 of Wands. So I really like the way that T. Susan Chang talks about this progression, where we have the contest in the 5 of Wands decan, the winner or the victor in the 2nd decan, and then the battle to retain status in the 3rd decan. So we have Saturn, which is like, you know, the pressure cooker of like the pressure to perform. Then we have a Jupiter decan of victory, right? And then finally we have a Mars ruled decan where we're defending territory or figuring out which hills we want to defend or where we have to change our position. And this is going to be really important as we get through Leo season, especially with Venus retrograding in the 3rd decan, because that 3rd decan is going to ask us, what do we really believe in? What is worth defending in our belief system related to our identity and things of that nature as well. So I think for me, talking about things like climate crisis, climate change, things we can do to protect and beautify and become more in sync with the planet is really, it's ingrained into my personality. It's ingrained into my character, and it's a legacy from my family who were conservationists and professors of biology, and we're stewards of state and national parks as well. So to me, that's the hill I'm willing to die on. I'm willing to take, flack and talk to people and see their viewpoint and maybe have the tough conversations with them over something like that. But there may be something in your life where you have to say, this is what I really believe in. This is the line I'm going to draw in the sand. And I'm willing to have those tough conversations about this particular thing because it's wrapped up in who I am. And that's okay. We all have those things, right? We all have things like that are important. Although, what I will say with Venus turning retrograde, you may have to be a little bit flexible about which of those things become part of your identity, which of those desires that you have, right, around that become part of you. So we're going to start off the month with Leo 1, first decan of Leo, for only a day or two. Okay, like we're going to be finishing off July with the first decan of Leo. We talked about this in the Astrology of July if you want to go back and look at that. But basically, this is the mock battle or the athletic contest, something where we're having a pressure to perform. And it's also related to mask making and things of that nature. It's important to think about this at least a little bit because we're going to start the month off with a full moon. So I'm going to stop my share and we'll talk about that full moon first. And then we'll come back and I'll break down Leo 2 for you. Okay, so here's August 1st. And I'm going to go directly to the full moon. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So there's the full moon, 2:31 p.m. Eastern Time, August 1st. And we have the moon opposing the sun from 9 degrees of Virgo. I'm sorry, 9 degrees of Aquarius. Sorry. Trying to stay on my game today. To 9 degrees of Leo. So the sun is going to be in its own domicile. The moon is going to be in the domicile of Saturn. So we really have a stronger sun than moon in this particular arrangement. The challenge with this full moon is that the moon is not going to be witnessing its host, Saturn. Okay. So when we have a moon that's not witnessing its host, there might be a little bit of confusion. There might be a little bit of, kind of like trying to find our way through the darkness. We will just have started the Venus retrograde cycle. We will be starting to get clear on what this is going to mean for us. We are also going to be experiencing Venus making an application to Uranus again by square shortly after this full moon. These two decans, we've got the Five of Wands, where we have the pressure to perform, where we're trying on new personas so that we can, leave a legacy or find meaning in our life. I like the transition from the Four of Cups to the Five of Wands as this feeling of this pregnant pause in the Four of Cups, the third decan of Cancer, to this okay, I know what I want. I know what I'm going to go for. Now I have to figure out how to utilize my will to get it, or how I can utilize attention to get it. And there's challenges with that. Sometimes when we're trying on new personas and new masks, it's a little bit of discomfort. So we may be feeling a little bit uncomfortable with our visibility around this full moon. And the opposite decan, Aquarius 1, is related to the Five of Swords, where we see three figures after a conflict, and then there is a defeat, there is a winner, and then there are a few people that haven't really won the struggle, going off into the exile, into the frontier. So to me, these two cards show the contest and then eventually the results of that contest. I think that we can also look at this full moon as the sun in the first decan of Leo as an attempt to become central, as an attempt to stand out, whereas the moon is asking us to balance a need to take the altruistic point of view into account, to not ignore people on the fringe of society instead of the people that are in the quote unquote center. It's kind of like the haves and the have-nots, the center versus the periphery. All of those things could be themes that start coming to light around this period of time. So what do? Well, the first decan of Aquarius is a Venus ruled decan. So I think that one of the things that could be part of this full moon, and I'll talk about this at length in one of my next live streams where we talk about full moons and things like that, is really just kind of seeing how you can find beauty in kind of the unorthodox. You might have to try to find some solutions that are outside the box if you want to raise your profile, if you want to rebrand yourself or do something like that. Venus retrograde in Leo is going to be a lot about how can you reimagine not only your values, okay, which is sometimes a Venus keyword, or how you create harmony in your life. But how are you gonna sell it to the world? What's your visibility look like? What are you known for? Is it a reflection of your authentic self, or is it a mask that you've been wearing? So a lot of us might be going through this kind of rebrand of consciousness. And I use like a marketing term, but you can think about this in your personal lives too. You may be thinking about, what do I really love? And is what I love worth defending, or have I become too stubborn in my viewpoint? And am I going to have to change that viewpoint to be a more authentic expression of myself? Okay. So think about that, because Jupiter is in that overcoming square to Venus, and Jupiter in the second decan of Taurus is really asking us to think about how we create abundance in our life. This is one of the things that we think about with that. In addition to Uranus being in the third decan of Taurus that I talked about earlier, with how can we find innovative solutions to deal with larger macrocosmic issues like climate crisis, like how we're going to start adjusting to the new reality that we have, or how are we going to prevent even further destruction of our habitability. Okay, so all of those things could bring up a lot of identity questions. Oftentimes what we want, or what we have wanted in the past, are based on those rules of the game of that time. And all of us have grown up in certain eras where there were certain metrics for success, or there were certain arrangements of where you could find happiness. And those metrics, those circumstances are changing, and we're going to have to flow with them. And that could really create a little bit of an identity crisis. I think I've been feeling this too. Like oftentimes what I would, as a Taurus moon, the thing that I would love the most is just to relax in my garden and just be at peace. And I'm doing that. So I'm not saying you can't do that. But some of the circumstances that I've been facing in my life, especially like yesterday, there was a tornado warning all afternoon. There was a hailstorm, and this is not unusual for this summer. Like we've had, I can't even count on the number of tornadoes and tornado warnings and storm warnings, severe thunderstorms. Like the wind is getting crazy. Like we've had a lot of severe weather events, even in my area in the Midwest, which is usually fairly protected from some of those things. So to me, I have to shift my mindset of what are my goals and my values within this new reality? Part of that includes building in resiliency, building in plans that will take into account the need to make adjustments when there are forces that are greater than myself that I have to adjust to. Like yesterday, I was working on the notes for my thing today, but I had to be ready to take my cats into the basement if a tornado hit my house. So you see what I'm saying? Like, and those are the types of things where we're really going to have to work through that as a collective and as individuals to figure out how you're going to make adjustments to be able to deal with things like greater winds, greater heat, drought, things like that. I feel for those of you who are in southern states right now who are going through 115 degree temperatures and things like that. You have to make adjustments to that, or you'll find yourself in a world of hurt. So I hope that makes sense about kind of what we're dealing with this, starting off with this full moon and some of the overall vibes that we're experiencing. I'm just going to look at the chat real quick, check in with all of you. Steven says, it's rabbit or duck season? ? No, it's Leo season. Good. Sarah Renee Marshall's here, says hello from a fellow third decan Leo rising. I can't believe how intense this week has been. I hope you folks are making it through this tunnel of varying pressures. Yeah, Sarah, it has been intense. And there's a lot of rising pressures that we're all experiencing. But again, the key word for this month, I think, is resiliency. A Leo energy, I think, is very resilient. I think all the fixed signs can be very resilient once they put their mind to it. Flexibility isn't always the strong suit of the fixed signs, but we are really going to have to dig deep for our Leonine courage and to be able to make the changes that are being presented to us right now. Steven says, third decan Sagittarius rising here, Leo on my ninth house cusp. Oh, nice. So you'll be experiencing this in that house of belief systems, long distance travel. All the Leo season stuff's going to be hitting there for you, Steven. Belinda is here. Hello, Belinda. Hello, Spencer and everyone. Nice to see you, Belinda. Hope you're doing well, friend. I believe Belinda is joining us from down under. So thanks for staying up with us today, friend. Let's see. Oh, Steven says Tony Bennett. Oh, Tony Bennett passed. Was that today? That's tough. Yeah, Tony Bennett, great singer. That's news to me. But he's what, like 94? Like, I think he lived a full life. It is still sad. But I think he can probably feel pretty good about the legacy that he's leaving behind. But yes, that is a light that has gone out, if that is indeed the case. So sorry to hear that. Luna Storm 23 says the Red Cross has a good list of how to prepare for emergencies ahead of time, supplies for people and pets, etc. Oh, nice. So maybe, yeah, Luna, if you want to direct us to a link that we can go to. Again, we want to be solution orientated on this channel. I don't want to be, what I want to avoid is falling too far into despair, fear mongering, or anything like that. I think we can acknowledge the reality of our situation with authenticity and clarity, while also just focusing on solutions. So I love the groupthink when we talk about that, and when we acknowledge these really challenging circumstances together, but we can put our heads together to find how to survive it too. Okay, so that's the full moon. I mean, we start the month with a full moon energy with Venus retrograde. We've got the positive things about the beginning of this month is we've got Mercury in Virgo. This to me is great. Okay, like this shows us that we have the ability to really find innovative solutions. We've got Mars making a trine to Jupiter in this chart, so we may be able to really take well thought out actions and to get our lives organized. Mercury is supporting Mars right now. Mercury is also making a whole sign trine to Jupiter and Uranus. So all the ideas are going to be flowing as Mercury moves through Virgo. And it's a great time to ask yourself, how do I prepare for the future? Virgo is a sign that loves to be prepared. And it's all about the pressure of the impending challenges of winter. Okay, so how do we take the abundance that we have and pass it on as a legacy and preserve it as a legacy? So we talk about Tony Bennett today. This is I'm just hearing this like in real time as we're discussing this. But Tony Bennett is someone who is passing on a legacy of music that will be preserved for a long time. We're going to remember who he is because he infused his soul into form, into song, just like George Michael, like thinking about him and his legacy. Like he has music that people will be listening to decades from now. So we have the ability to bring essence into form with Mercury and Virgo. Okay, that requires though a very discerning eye. This is one thing that stuck out to me about the George Michael documentary I was watching last night, the Wham documentary on Netflix, is, George Michael had Mars in Virgo. Almost the exact degree, I believe it was 11 degrees Virgo, but very similar to where the Mars is in this full moon. And I remember hearing in my mind that as they were talking, his partner Andrew, his musical partner, talking about George's discerning eye, like how detail orientated he was, and I just really resonate with George and his story and his chart. He has his moon is right on my ascendant and North Node at 21 degrees Leo. We both have Mars in Virgo. His Venus is almost the same degree as my Venus. And what I saw in him was somebody that had a lot of ideas, who was not only a great singer, but a great songwriter, and most importantly, a great music producer. There was a story in that documentary about how a really famous producer, from Muscle Shoals, Jerry Wexler, he was working with him, and the mix that they came up with just wasn't satisfactory. And George went and redid it himself, like at his own studio, and came up with something way better. And I can relate to that feeling of like, okay, to bring something into a timeless form, you do have to pay attention to the details. You do have to keep working at it and reshaping it and things of that nature. So I think that I'm saying all of that because I think that at the beginning of this month, we really have support for being able to reshape our reality, to be able to pass on a legacy. Now, there is not we aren't into the point where we are without challenge. And we see that in the form of Saturn. So all of these Virgo planets here in this full moon arrangement are going to be opposing Saturn and Pisces, especially Mercury. So you may want to do things a certain way, but there's a challenge from Saturn saying, what does it mean? Does it fit into the bigger picture? Does it fit into the essence that you're trying to create? So you always want to keep one eye on meaning and essence that are going while you're trying to craft form and pass on a legacy. Let me look through the chat. Okay. So Caroline's talking about climate change. It's hard to know what we should do because China emits as much pollution as all the rest of the world, of the countries of the developed world. Scientists warn that without agreement with the US and China, it'll be hard to avert dangerous climate change. Okay. Yes, I think that might be a true statement. I can't verify that in real time here. But yes, we need to have agreements with world powers about how to reduce carbon emissions, including ourselves first. I think we need to take personal responsibility first before we start pointing fingers at a country like China, Carolyn. But yes, we do need to have those conversations with big world powers. I have mixed feelings about that type of thinking, Carolyn, and I'll tell you why. We in America have created enormous prosperity from, quite honestly, from exploiting other countries through capitalism. And now when we have a developing country like China, we want to tell them, well, China, you can't have all the things that we have in America because the planet's going to, burn up and be on fire, which is true. But I think we have to take into account that a lot of people in China are just trying to have a basic standard of living. And it's a little bit hypocritical to be like, they need to just make all the sacrifices while we continue to make almost no sacrifices here in America. So I'm going to push back on that way of thinking just a little bit. I'm going to Leo 3 here, Carolyn. I'm saying this with love because I know that what you're saying is true. And what you're saying is important because it needs to be a global effort. It shouldn't just be like, let's point a finger at one country. We all need to be able to talk about this together as a community and make those agreements. And it's not just one country's responsibility to reduce carbon emissions. It's everyone's responsibility, and including America. We are one of the worst polluters on the planet right now. So we need to look in the mirror first, Carolyn, as Americans, before we start pointing those fingers. Okay. Yeah, but you're right though. Like I said, we can look at it multiple ways. It is very important to see things from multiple perspectives. But again, one of the problems that I think we have first of all, as Americans, is we don't like to take personal responsibilities. We like to blame our problems on other people, and we don't. Whenever we try to look in the mirror and say, hey, we have done some stuff that we should probably change, the nationalism and the pride and all of that stuff starts to kick in, and then the conversation gets derailed. And as Bonnie is pointing out, both of the things we're pointing out are true. And you're absolutely right, Bonnie. We both have to have a hard look in the mirror where we reduce our own carbon emissions through legislation. Let's just be very clear about that today. And this is I apologize for the Sun Pluto opposition type of experience we're having here, but we need to call this stuff out sometimes. It has to happen at a macrocosmic level. It's not just about planting a clover lawn and pollinator habitats. It's about literally changing some of the bigger structures of society, including how we regulate some of the biggest polluters on the planet, which are corporations. So I can't say that any louder and clearer. And of course, China has to be part of that because they have an enormous population and an enormous gross domestic product that they're producing there. But again, we have to have those conversations with them while also leading the way and setting an example. Okay, like we can't expect them to do that if we're just going to sit on our hands and be like, well, we're going to profit from you doing this and we're not going to do shit. And I'm sorry to get upset about this, but I'm pretty irritated about how people point fingers. And I know that you might not be pointing fingers, Carolyn, but this is not just about you and your statement. This is what I see in the collective, in our conversations that we have. I was so fucking angry the other day when I read about like Republican lawmakers that are literally trying to defund organizations like John Kerry's climate committee. Like that kind of stuff blows my fucking mind as how ridiculous it is. You know, that people are literally going to be like, let's take away resources from people that are actually trying to make change. So you're just getting the brunt of my anger at a lot of different things, Carolyn. It's not personal. It's not you. I'm irritated at the system right now, and I would love for there to be change. And I'm dumbfounded at the how slow it is and how people are actively working against helping people in the face of extreme crisis and suffering. It makes me so angry. It makes all of the Cancerian and Leo mother bear energy come out of me in a fierce way, because we're allowing people to suffer and die because they want to pretend like nothing is wrong and literally work against it because of the corporate interests in our government. I'm going to take a deep breath and recenter myself. But these are the types of conversations we're going to have, and sometimes they're going to get passionate, and sometimes we're going to get emotional. Yeah, and Sarah's pointing out, we also like to think that we're qualified to be the world police. Yeah, so irritating. I mean, this is the thing. It's such an irritating, yeah. It's not, here's what I will say. Here's how we can reframe and refocus. The challenges that we're facing should not be political issues, right? Should not be political issues. We're all people living on this beautiful, amazing planet. It's not about red, blue, Republican, Democrat. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about how can we all figure out how to survive on this changing planet? How can we examine our actions? How can we examine what we have done as a community, as a human community, whether we're American, Chinese, European, African, South American, Australian, etc. We are a human community. This is not a political issue. Bonnie is pointing out when survival is political, we're all in trouble. Amen to that. I'm just going to say it again. This is not a political issue. You can have a culture war about other things, but this is a survival issue for the human species, of which everyone here is a part of. Every single person on this planet. And until we reconcile and figure that out, then we're going to have a problem, okay? But once we start unifying, this is why I love this community. I love all of you in the chat here who coming from all corners of the world. This is why we have to have this conversation, these tough conversations. It's why we're going to get fired up every once in a while, because we need to. We're at a point where we need to get fired up. And this astrology this Leo energy. You're seeing it firsthand. Like, okay, this is when you if you provoke a Leo 3 person, there are going to be certain times where we're going to get fired up. Like, Leo 3 is a Mars ruled decan. Venus is going to be retrograding. Venus is stationing, like today, basically. And we're going to feel fired up about things that we're passionate about. And I'm getting fired up about it. And again, we can have the conversations while we're not going to devolve into personal attacks here. And we shouldn't devolve into personal attacks in our conversations with each other. What we should do is we can attack an ideal, right? We can debate, hopefully with grace, an ideal without having to attach every single personal feeling to it. Some of that is okay because some personal investment will be motivating. But at the end of the day, we can hopefully we can talk about these things objectively and then say, well, I respect your humanity and you respect my humanity. And I still love you and I can love you too. There's the Taurus moon part of the show. Okay. So, all right, let me look through the chat here. Carol says, whoa, your Mars is on fire today. Yes, I'm fired up about this. I just cannot understand the apathy in our government systems. And it's not even apathy. It's like I said, it's literally working against solutions that I get really, really frustrated with. Bonnie says, love it. Thank you, Spencer. Passion is appreciated. Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate you. Sarah says, and incidentally, these environmental disasters disproportionately affect marginalized folks. Amen, Sarah. Say it louder for the people in the back of the room. We're so wealthy in this country. Like that, we're like, well, we have air conditioning. 90% of Americans have air conditioning or central air in their homes. I think it's something like 3 to 5% worldwide. So while the rest of the world is literally melting, we're sitting in our air-conditioned homes being like, oh, maybe this other country should figure this out. It's like, no, like we have a responsibility to do something. And like Sarah is saying, we may not be the first to suffer from this, but there's other countries that are just like literally like they can't eat. This is the other thing I was going to say about this. It's not just things getting hot and you're a little inconvenienced. If we keep going at this rate, I read an article this morning about the entire food system could start to fail. Like grain systems could start to fail. Do you like food? Do you like eating? Because if you like food and eating, you're going to have to do something about this. And that's going to affect everyone globally. These actions, we are affecting each other with these actions globally. It's not just in our backyards. We're not going to be protected from this by our wealth forever. Okay. So just get that through your mind. And yes, Rose T says the Leo energy is real. I'm fired up all the time. It's coming from a place of love. Amen. And please don't misinterpret my anger for hate. It is so much love. It is. I love this planet. I love the birds and the flowers and the trees. I love my fellow human beings, and I want to protect it. I want a earth that is beautiful for my grandkids, for their grandkids. It's not just about me. I want the squirrels and the birds and the bees to have a place to live. It's not just about humanity. It's about everything. Like, and that, again, yeah, you're right. That comes from a deep, deep sense of love and appreciation. Oh. Luna says, many people have difficulty with a good water source, which is so important in the heat. Yep. Yeah, and Steven says the foodies will be in an uproar. Well, they will be, because they won't have anything to eat. Like they won't. This is the thing. Like, you have extended periods of drought in places where they make the ingredients that you put in your food. Those aren't going to. They're not going to grow anymore. And what we're seeing is an increase in the number of days where we have extreme heat. Like, we can weather a few of those, but if it keeps happening over and over and over again, then entire crops begin to fail. All right, let's keep going. Let's take a stretch break. Let's take a stretch break. It's so early in the show. Well, if you haven't unsubscribed already, please like this video. You know I love you. And you know that I say this out of like I said, a deep sense of caring for you. I mean, I think that we've weeded out probably the people already that just can't hear this message, and they're going to just go do what they're going to do anyway. But if you're still here, I think it means you have an open mind, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you going on this journey with me and with each other, because we have to be real with one another during Leo season. We have to be able to have these tough conversations about not only the challenges that we're going through as individuals, but the challenges that we go through as a global community. And this is a global show. Make no mistake about it, there's a reason why people come here from all corners of the world. It's because we're trying to acknowledge that this isn't just an American show or whatever. This is about everyone. Okay, so let's go back to our talk. I'm going to bring up the decans of Leo again. Let's talk about Leo 2, because we talked about the first decan. Now the second decan, when we get into the second decan, I gotta compose myself. I'm really feeling the Sun-Pluto opposition today, friends. I'm feeling super, super fired up and emotional today. So maybe it's a side of me you haven't seen, but we all have our emotional breaking points, I think. And this is an issue that's really, really important to me. And I hope it's important to you. Yes, Sarah says the grief and the angry response, they're residues and evidence of love. Thank you for saying that, Sarah. And you're right too. This isn't just anger or righteous anger. It's deep, deep sadness at seeing some of these changes that were preventable if we had kind of taken action sooner. But many of the even worse outcomes are still preventable if we take action now. But yes, deep, deep sadness is a part of this. And I recognize that all of those emotions are mashed up together. Yeah, Dawn, we're going into the depths of Hades today. Pain and Turtle says, Spencer, I like the mama bear energy. The anger is justified in my opinion. And Luna Storm says, honest emotions are good. And thank you. And Carolyn says, we love you, Spencer. Well, I love you too, friends. This is why I'm trying to use my voice to maybe bring clarity to our situation. I wasn't always comfortable speaking up like this. It's taken a long time for me to feel comfortable enough to risk people's disapproval for what I viewed as truth. And there's just no time for that anymore. There is time only for reflecting the reality that I see and figuring out what we can do about it together as global partners. All right. So Leo 2. Leo 2 shows a figure in a triumphant return from a victory in battle. Like maybe that mock battle that we saw in Leo 1 is related to this energy of winning our authenticity, right? Part of the Leo energy is the victory of becoming your authentic self. And to me, integrity is a part of that. And my definition of integrity is your inner feelings matching your outer expression. And as we've witnessed today, a lot of my inner feelings are being externalized. But how do we return from a victory? What do we do when things are going well, as some of the Leo 2 significations? What do we do when things are going well for us, when we've won a victory? How do we maintain our humility? How do we help others along the way find their own authenticity? What is interesting about this card in this decan is that Jupiter, it's a Jupiter ruled card, and there is some significations about this man of triumph, Vir Triumphus, is returning from battle, but not just to exonerate himself, or not to, I don't know what the right word is, not exonerate, but to exemplify, I don't know, to celebrate himself. He is going to make a sacrifice at the temple of Zeus or Jupiter. So there is something about some kind of sacredness to this sacrifice. And there's a story with Leo that I think is really important. And it's the story of Percival that we see in Liz Green's The Astrology of Fate. Liz Green talks about in the Astrology of Fate, Percival's Grail quest. And Leo energy is a lot of the quest for the Grail, but what is the Grail? And who does it serve is important. Percival is a knight that leaves home in search of this Holy Grail and finds a castle and finds a frail king, the Fisher King. And the first time he goes to this castle, he's just struck dumb. He can't speak. He can't say anything. He's just observing, and he fails to ask the right question, okay? Or any question for that matter. He just isn't able to speak up. And then the castle disappears, and he has to find it again and go on this journey again. The second time he returns, he's changed. And what has changed is his compassion. When he first arrives, he asks, what is the cause of your suffering? He's saying, what ails you, right? He has stopped thinking completely about his own glorification, his own needs, his own desires, and he's learned the lesson of compassion. And this is a Leo lesson. This is something where when we start asking the right questions based on compassion, that's when we become great leaders, okay? The things that I talk about on this channel, I'm using this Leonine spotlight, hopefully for a communal cause. And that wasn't always the case when I was younger. Like, as a beginning musician, I could see that sometimes there were times where I was falling prey to glorifying my own ego through my music. And that eventually that started to ring hollow. And it was really one of the impetuses for my switch to being a professional musician to doing this work, because I felt like I could use my spotlight for a collective message rather than just an individual one. So this is something I want you to consider with Leo, and how can you learn the lesson of compassion, and how can you ask that question of understanding others' suffering. And by asking that question, he had found the Grail, right? The Grail was that, I think, on some level, compassion. So in Leo 2, as we move through this period of time, we may start to find that we have a sense of success. We may find that we have our community that we belong in. We may find validation and recognition. So asking yourselves, who and what do you want to be celebrated for? How can you share and uplift others through your success? So there's the part of the Grail mission, right? How can you make the work more important than your ego? That's the big part, okay? How can you view yourself as a channel rather than the source? This is another big one. When you are an artist, you are opening up to universal forces. And when you can get out of your own way, you become a vehicle for the divine energy, for the Tao, for the, whatever. And I asked this question at UAC a few years ago: how do we become clear channels as diviners? I asked this to a panel of Chris Brennan, Stephen Forrest, Chris McCrae, Sam Reynolds. I was like, this guy just showed up. They didn't know who I was. And I asked this question: how do we become clear channels for this work? And I think that it threw them for a loop a little bit. But that's the question that we are asking ourselves, not only when we're artists, but when we're doing this work as well. How can we get out of our own ways so that we can open up to what wants to come through us? Where does your character still need cultivation? This is a thing too. Sometimes our characters are forged through tragedy and through being at the bottom of the wheel of fortune. And what are we going to do to become resilient when we are faced with really difficult circumstances? There's another type of character development about who are you going to be when you are successful? Who are you going to be when you finally do like become wealthy or famous or achieved your goal? Because you can lose everything very quickly if you don't understand what to do with that energy. And really what to do is to share with others, uplift others, to continue to be of service, to continue to practice the types of energy that brought you success in the first place. A lot of times we get lazy and we get complacent because we think that we don't have to continue to grow once we've reached a certain level of competence, success, etc. And I think that's a mistake, like, because it can all get taken away in an instant. You see this. I spent a number of years watching music documentaries like Behind the Music on VH1, and that was really instructional to me that all of this can get taken away in an instant, if like the success, the fame, whatever, if you are not coming into alignment with the types of motivation that got you there in the first place, or the types of actions, or the types of work, or the types of generosity that got you there in the first place. And then again, finally, we ask ourselves, whom does the Grail serve? How are you going to utilize your spotlight? How are you going to utilize your success to be able to bring people peace, to be able to alleviate suffering and things of that nature? Okay. Don says, yeah. I'm just looking through the chat. I'm sorry if I'm missing some of your comments. I really appreciate you putting these comments in here, friends. Prudence is here. Nice to see you, Prudence. Hope you're doing well. Dawn says, the outrage is justified for me as well. Just know that most people don't listen to us when we express outrage. They think we are just loons, but it is hard as hell not to be outraged. Thanks for saying that, Dawn. Again, you catch more flies with honey. I do my best to try to be positive and uplifting and think of the solutions rather than get fixated on my anger and sadness. But I do think it is important to acknowledge the anger and sadness, and then start shifting. If we try to repress those feelings, they fester, and sometimes they just erupt in a plutonic fashion, like they have today. And I think it's okay to be a little angry. I think it's okay to be a little sad. And we always have to have this, like, I don't know. A lot of the times, Leo people, Leo risings, Leo suns, Leo whatevers, they always feel like they have to put their best face on. They always feel like they have to have this pristine image that they're crafting of who they are to be able to get the approval of the collective. And eventually, I think another kind of Leo trait as you age is you become less attached to that. And you start being like, what is right is more important than being liked. And sometimes that's going to come out as a roar. Us lions are we need to roar every once in a while, and but then, once the roars come out and we get our chin scratched a little bit, or we're able to kind of feel like we've expressed an authentic thought and feeling, we can return back to, peace. Yeah, Steven's feeling fired up too. Bonnie says, do you ever weave astrology brilliance into your music performance now, Spencer? And Painted Turtle says, I want Spencer to do his music too, a great way to share energy and information. The short answer is yes. The last set of songs I wrote were around 2016. And I don't mean to just make this about me, but you asked the question. So Forgive me for this digression here if you're just here for the Astrology of August. But I wrote a number of songs during the election cycle of 2016 that was, a lot of it was both social commentary and expressing my grief and sadness. That, you remember, that year wasn't just the election year. It was like half of the music and entertainment industry and like passed away. Like it was a year where like everyone passed away. Like George Michael passed away that year, the end of the year. Prince passed away. Princess Leia passed away. Oh man, so many. David Bowie. Like it was a year we just lost so many people. I think everyone was like, nope, we're not gonna do this. Whatever this is happening in 2016 and on, we're checking out, you know. And yeah, I also have a song that I wrote about Leda, the story, mythological story of Leda and the Swan. I have a track on my SoundCloud called Guinevere that is about the story of Lancelot and Guinevere. There are some themes, some astrological themes weaved within that. But I was having this conversation with Tanya earlier today, because this is probably going to be part of my Leo Venus retrograde. Watching that documentary with George Michael last night was kind of like, man, I need to re-engage with my art. I love astrology and I love serving my community, but I don't want to completely lose myself in that, right? Where is my creative expression? And she was pointing out, she was like, you know, you've had so many years now of learning new stories, of diving into mythological and astrological themes. And we talked about that maybe the well is full now. Maybe there is space to do more creative endeavors. Around 2016, my well felt empty. I was feeling a little bit hopeless and a little depressed about how things were going then. And I kind of lost my spirit for it. And I was having other things going on in my life. I inherited a lot of responsibility as a parent from that time till now, and now my daughter is out in the university system, and things are freeing up again. So we'll see. I think that would be a really nice thing to re-engage with. If you'll do me a favor, if you want to know more about the music that I have done in the past, I do have a music channel called Spencer Astrology Music. I changed the name of it. You can find that on YouTube. Also have a SoundCloud. I have a SoundCloud for Spencer Michaud Astrology and a SoundCloud for Spencer Michaud Music. There are some demos on there from that time if you wanted to get some, you know, I have a song I wrote about the Women's March in Washington, D.C. around that period of time. I have a song that was very much about some of the shining a light on the negativity of the immigration policies of the Trump administration at that time. I have songs about myth. I have songs about a woman who took pictures in the city. I wrote a song about the history of Detroit. It's called Boomtown. I really like that tune. Check it out. And so, yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you think. I also wrote a song about another Leo, Philippe Petit, who was a tightrope walker that tightrope walked across the Twin Towers. And there's like kind of an Elton John, Yellow Brick Road kind of feel to the production on there. And I'm hoping to re-engage with some of those things moving forward again. So thanks for encouraging me, friends. I think I need to hear that people still want that from me on some level as well. I want it for myself. Like, I think that's the key. But if there is, I definitely do get motivated by positive feedback, I guess, which is, again, a Leo quality. But the key is, how can you do it for you rather than just to do it for the applause? But something to understand is the applause is nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, but anyway, so thank you. Let's see. Sarah says, funny, Spencer, I have been thinking about Renee Sill's refrain that Leos often carry the burden of perfection. Whew, yeah, I'm a perfectionist, but I have a Virgo stellium as well. I would also argue that perfectionism can also be a Cancerian trait. As Cancerians, there's a secret kind of signification with Cancer regarding what comes out of you needing to be divine. And when you don't feel like it's divine or timeless, sometimes we tend to project our divinity onto others. And I will say one of the things I was guilty of over the last 6 or 7 years was trying to project some of that divinity and creative force onto my daughter, trying to coach her to be like an Olympic swimmer and helping her with some of her creative endeavors. And some of that's just being a parent. But I as our lives have started to separate a little bit more and she's become more independent, I'm starting to re-engage with the creative spark and figuring out who I am as an individual without having to project that onto her. And that's an important shift, and that's something that we'll all be thinking about. I do also want to point out in Leo season here, and let's go back to the chart, is that the nodes have shifted to Aries. I'm just laughing because of like how like fired up we're getting. So the North Node now is in Aries, and it's really a passion, intensity and passion, Eros energy. I know that some of the views that I express on this channel are going to drive some people away, and I want to say that Eros also has lead-tipped arrows, and it can be repellent, but the gold-tipped arrows draw people in and call people in. So this is something I've had to learn too. I can't make everyone happy, but if I express my authenticity, the right people are going to find me. That's the same thing with you and your creativity in Leo season. Leo season isn't about changing who you are to get the applause from everybody. On some level, if you're creating art that everybody thinks is amazing, you're probably not authentically expressing yourself because you just can't please everyone. There are certain transcendent artists. I think about people like Michael Jackson and things like that, and some could argue the Beatles, and everyone's going to have their opinions. Even those artists, aren't universally beloved. But your authentic art is going to attract people who resonate with your message, and it's probably going to repel some people that aren't in alignment with it, and that's okay. And you have to learn that as a Leo type, that is okay. Sometimes that's a message that you're on the right track. So just think about that. Dawn says, for sure, Spencer has a Sag sun and rising. I bluntly speak my truth. I only warn you I catch flack all the time. As I get older, I am finally learning everyone is at a different stage in this journey. Oh, definitely, Dawn. And on this channel, I've done a lot of work trying to be, I like guys like Fred Rogers and things like that, where love is the undercurrent of the message. But even Fred Rogers, later in his career, had to stand up for things that he believed in. Fred Rogers sat in front of Congress and was like, we need funding for public television because this is important. He had to push back on the powers that be because he had something that he believed in, even though he was a beloved figure for his kindness. He had to stand up for something that he believed in. So there will be moments where we have to answer the call, right? Where we have to say, no, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to have to push back on the prevailing sentiment to be able to fight for our beliefs on some level. Yeah, I miss David Bowie too, Luna. Bonnie says 2016 was a big year of soul shifting experiences. Was it ever? That was a big year. Yeah, Glenn Fry of the Eagles passed that year. Yes, you're right, Luna. Yeah, absolutely. Painted Turtle says there's a lot of amazing music veering towards divinity, astrology, and myths right now, especially on Spotify. Ooh, good. So maybe it's just the timing's just better for the type of things that I created. And so maybe I'll find a more receptive audience with that, because I felt like a lot of it was just like either going over people's heads or just falling on deaf ears. But maybe that's not the case now. It's a lot different climate out there than back when I was more active doing professional music. Thank you for your support, Bonnie. Okay, I'm just looking through the chat. Sarah says that makes great sense about cancers. Like, if it isn't transcendent, is it worth it? Yeah, it's true. I want you to think about the story of Achilles and like how Achilles' mother, Themis, or Thetis, or I always get those two confused. I believe it's Thetis, the sea goddess, projected her divinity onto Achilles and tried to make him immortal. So there's themes of that with Cancerians. Is like we always think of Cancer as this like emotional mothering figure, but there is this like legacy type of protective of a legacy, and trying to reach for immortality. Especially, I have the sun very close to the fixed star Sirius, and that fixed star is associated with legacies, immortality, trying to protect things against the ravages of time as well. And the fertility of the Nile. It was a signal for the fertility of the Nile River Valley when it appeared, of the fertile waters returning. So that's a part of it too. Dawn says, whoever we are, people come and go. People go. Wish them well on their journey and do what feeds your soul. It is why we're here. Amen to that. Sarah says, I have Sun in Aries and Venus in Gemini. Another placement we shared. Those placements provide me with more tolerance for experimentation and even sloppiness in some areas. Yeah, I'm learning how to be more like that. I had a tendency to be like, if it wasn't perfect, I wasn't going to show it to anybody. Like, I've had to get over that, right? I had to keep working on it. It took me 10 years to release a studio album for various reasons, but a lot of it was because I just didn't feel it was good enough. And I go back and listen to even my demos, and I was like, that's really not true. I should have just let go. Steven says, the Pisces dilemma, stand up for one's beliefs instead of going with the flow. Yeah. There is definitely, there's a decan of Pisces, the third decan of Pisces, that's all about really fighting and sacrificing for your beliefs. There's a Mars ruled decan in Pisces, so there is a part of that for sure, Steven. Stella says, I've been going through a creative lull since around that time as well. Yeah, I don't think we're alone in this, Stella. I think that life got really complicated around that period of time, where voices of hate started to become amplified, and that was really tough for people who are sensitive. And I don't know if we're coming out of that or not, or whatever, but I think that there hopefully will be new voices of hope that we can tap into as creative artists as well. Okay, friends, Leo 2. Oh my goodness. You all are so patient. Thank you for going on this journey with me here today. Thank you for being patient with this process. And again, I know my messaging isn't going to be for everyone, but I do appreciate the people that stick it out with me and that are supportive of us kind of figuring some of this stuff out together. And I'll try to be supportive of your journey as well. And again, just keep in mind, if I disagree with you, even if it's publicly on the channel, I still care about you, and we can have a objective disagreement about like an issue, but it doesn't mean that I don't think that you're a good person, or that it's an indictment on your character or something like that. Does that make sense? Like, that's how we can have these types of discussions, when we almost detach ourselves from the issue and look at it as an issue, while still allowing ourselves to have some passion around it as well. Okay, Leo 2. Leo 2, we're going to skip to August 3rd. And I'd be remiss to say, if I didn't remind you to like and subscribe to the channel. if you're new here, this is a little bit of a fiery day. We're getting fired up emotionally. Usually it's fairly chill here, but as a Cancerian person, I would say that the energy I have is very reflective, and what I am seeing and experiencing in my own experience in my own hometown and in how I'm observing the world is that we are at a crisis point, and we have to kind of start to get more aware and start to take action before things get any worse. But like and subscribe. If you're enjoying the work that I'm doing here today, if you want to make a donation, you can. There's a little super chat or super sticker $sign in the chat, or if you want to make a donation at buymeacoffee.com, that's a great way to support the channel. You can also buy my webinars, my Decan webinars. Leo and Cancer are on sale right now, last day for Cancer, but the Decans of Leo will be on sale for 20% off until the 23rd of August. Okay, so on August 3rd, we have Venus going under the beams of the sun. So here is this relationship that we're looking at here with Venus within 15 degrees of the sun. And you can see that in my Astro Gold program, the numbers are red. That is what shows us that a planet is retrograde, or a point like the north and south node are retrograde in the chart. So what that means is that literally in the sky, and some astrologers have different opinions on this. Like there are some astrologers that believe that Venus doesn't go under the beams until like 8 degrees or something like that. I have standardized it to 15 degrees, which is I'm following Demetra George's standardization and the standardization of some Hellenistic astrologers. So if you use a different method, that's okay. But this is what I use to figure this out. Kid KP1231 says, it's your channel, preach on, people are free to go elsewhere. That's a good point. I just appreciate all of you that have stuck around and are willing to have this conversation with me, and in my view, to be part of the solution. And it does take curiosity. It does take us being able to talk these things out. I'm not going to be right all the time, and I've learned to like be able to try to hear other people's viewpoints and world views. So hopefully I'll be able to admit when I'm wrong on this channel, and I will allow space for you also to do as well. So thank you for saying that, KP1231. That's one of the greatest humbling acts that we can do, is, you know, be willing to change a position that we have when we gain more information, right? There's going to be some thoughts that I have that I just don't have enough information to make a great decision on, or to have a viewpoint on. But there'll be other things where the decision and the views that I have now are right for this moment, and then I will have to change them as new information and new circumstances arise. And that should be true for all of us, is that when we get new information and we're faced with a new present, we have to respond to that present with the skills and tools that will meet our current needs. And that's why I've been banging the drum so hard for this, is I think that we have a new circumstance right now that is unprecedented, and we have to change the way that we meet that challenge, and meet it in a way that is reflective of the current circumstances, not what we've done in the past, not what we think is going to happen in the future, but how we're going to meet that challenge now, today. Thank you, Dawn, for the super stickers. Even when I disagree with you, I know your heart is in the right place. That's what keeps me coming back to your channel. Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate you saying that. You know, we can disagree on stuff. We can agree. I love to say we can agree to disagree, because we respect each other's humanity. And I hope that we're modeling on this channel also a way to allow, you know, discourse in a way that ends with love. Okay? Because this is something we lack on the internet a lot. Oftentimes, these types of things devolve into personal attacks, and I refuse to do that on this channel. Even if I vehemently disagree with someone's viewpoint, at the end of the day, I still value you as a person. And like I said, if we are getting an entrenched position, we can say, well, let's agree to disagree. And then we go on to something else, right? So thanks, Dawn, for the super sticker. Steven says, when Siskel and Ebert were around reviewing movies, many people did not agree with their views. I still read them. Yeah. I mean, again, that's the beauty of having different human viewpoints and melodies, right? Think about us as a human symphony, and we all have different roles and parts to play. And sometimes we're going to have some dissonance, and sometimes we're going to be in harmony, but you know, it's all part of the same composition. Julene is here. Hi, Spencer. Glad to catch you live. I've replayed the lives I've missed, and they are great. Love that you're expressing yourself and your passion. Thanks, Julene. Hope that you're doing well down there in Phoenix. Are you in Arizona? It's got to be crazy, crazy hot down there. I hope that you're staying safe and that everything is okay in your world, and that you're getting into Cardinals training camp coming up. So nice to see you here, my Gemini friend. Okay, let's talk about Venus going under the beams. So this is a time where having harmony as Venus is stationing retrograde today, that having a harmonious experience, it's going to take more work when Venus is retrograde, because we're going to be really reconsidering the hills that we die on, When Venus goes under the beams, expect some kind of messaging around what you may be, what you love, what turf you're willing to defend, okay, what hills you're willing to defend, what beliefs you're willing to defend. And this may be a time where you're going to have to kind of take a hard look in the mirror and say, is that really serving my life, my community, my world? Or is that one that I've gotten really fixated on that isn't really productive? Again, as a 12th house, Cancer sun, Leo rising, I've had so many experiences of like the universe humbling me, where I've had to be like, you know what, I was wrong. Like I don't like admitting it, but you're right, I was wrong, and I need to shift my perspective. And we might be at one of these moments with Venus going under the beams of the sun at this point. And Julian is saying, yes, Arizona, 118 degrees. Oh my God. Oh, Julian, I hope that you're staying safe and that you're staying hydrated and everything around you is going well for you. But this is the thing. This is why we say some of these things, because we have literally people in the chat here who are in dangerous temperatures right now. And it's only going to increase in its frequency. And because I care about Julian as my friend, I want to continue to ring the bell for the changes that we need to make, so that people like Julian can live in peace without feeling like they can't go outside and their lives being in danger. Dawn says, right on, Stephen, listen to all and then discern your truth. You know it when you feel it in your heart and not your gut. Totally believe that philosophy. Yeah, nice observation, Dawn. Okay, so this is the third. Venus moving under the beams is kind of the big experience that we're having around the end of this week, after we are coming off the full moon. One little technique that you can do that I like is thinking about the first aspect that the moon is going to make after it is released from the bond. Okay, so in this case, that means within an opposition, within 15 degrees of an opposition on either side, or 15 degrees of a conjunction. So when you're looking at new and full moons, you can say, okay, when is the moon going to be outside of that 15 degrees of, I don't know, it's kind of like it's chained up or something like that. The moon is a manifester. So it's going to be difficult for the moon to bring things to fruition when it's under the bond. So what we look at when we see the moon escaping the bond is, what type of experience are we going to have as the moon makes its first aspect after being released from that? In this case, it's actually in opposition to Venus. So we're going to see that happening at about 25 degrees. It's here. I've gone past it already, but it's going to be at about 25 degrees of Aquarius. So this full moon could be about, should I stay or should I go? Should I, like the third decan of Aquarius says, it's a 7 of swords. It's kind of like, okay, this isn't working. I'm gonna go move on and let go and embrace the unknown. So again, this could be that moment where you have to say, do I need to defend this position, especially about the things that I love and that are my beliefs and my values, or do I need to move off of this position and move forward with my life so that I'm not fighting a losing battle, right? A lot of times when we get entrenched in our belief systems and we have those quote unquote hills that we die on, it's so exhausting if the position that we're defending just isn't in alignment with our reality anymore. And what was once worth spending that energy defending just isn't anymore. And it can just exhaust you. And sometimes it's liberating to move off of an entrenched position. It is such a liberation to say, you know what? I don't have to spend energy getting fixated on this belief anymore, right? Like if you try to go, let's say, here's an example, and Julian says, thank you, Spencer. Football has started for my grandson, Keegan. Oh, nice. And that's a little scary in this heat. Yes. Though it's at night. And should they go to camp next week in a much cooler place? Yeah, that's, wow, that is intense. Playing football in 118 degree heat. Yeah, be real careful with that. Yeah, at night is much better. But stay hydrated and really have him pay attention to his body, because heat stroke can be a real, kids can die in that temperature doing that kind of activity. So that's the kind of thing, right? Here's one example. You're playing football, and let's say you have a coach that's like, no, we practice at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when we always have practice. This is what we're going to do it. But the temperature is 120 degrees outside. If that coach wants to die on that hill, he's literally going to have he's not going to get the performance that he wants out of his players, number one. And he's literally endangering their lives, number two. So one of the things that he would have to do is move off of that position to make adjustments to the reality of the situation. So this is something that you might want to think about coming off of this full moon, is how can you make adjustments to the beliefs to meet the needs of the moment? Okay, let's move forward. So we get to August the 6th. Yeah, and I remember seeing Julene, I've seen pictures of your grandson. He looks like a monster. Like he's probably amazing at football. I love that you're supporting his journey. I think that I love sports, and I hope that we're able to keep doing it as we move forward in a safe and healthy way. Yeah, Prudence says that's like 50 degrees Celsius for those who don't use freedom degrees. I'm starting to learn more about Celsius, friends. Sorry to only say it in Fahrenheit, but my brain hasn't quite been able to make the conversion quick enough yet. I did see that I had to look this up because they said the heat index in like a airport in Iran recently was like 55 degrees Celsius, which translates to like 150 degrees or something like that, or like it's Fahrenheit. And I was like, oh my God. And heat index, of course, being the combination of temperature and humidity, which can make things much more dangerous. Yeah, and Prudence, where are you located? I don't remember where you're at. Are you in the UK or something like that? Like, are you a Celsius user? I don't remember if you're a UK person or American. Obviously, if you're doing Celsius, maybe it's Canadian. Like, I think they do Celsius in Canada too. All right, so August 6th, we have a square between the Sun and Jupiter. Okay, so this is the overcoming square. Oh yeah, Alberta. Ooh, you're probably getting forest fires up there. I hope you're doing okay and the air's okay for you, Prudence. I've been looking at air quality maps, and there's just giant red swaths in northwestern Canada. And it's a little nutty to look at. So Jupiter squaring the Sun on August 6th. These two decans, the Jupiter decan, as I talked about earlier, is related to the Six of Pentacles. So that decan of Jupiter is related to giving and receiving of benefits. Okay, it's also related to healthy routines. With Jupiter in the second decan of Taurus, we may be having to figure out how to become consistent in our routines to create prosperity over time. Now, this is territory I know well because my moon's at 15 Taurus, right on the midheaven. So the way I've tried to create success and abundance is by just continuing to show up, continuing to do what is necessary in the moment, to water the garden as much as it needs to be watered in that day without overly fussing about it, right? So this may be something where to create honor and merit in your life, which is a Jupiter signification in Hellenistic astrology. This is how you brought, the actions that you take that will bring you good fortune. Whereas Venus is like the actions that it's not even action. It's like being receptive to the good fortune that comes your way, where I think Jupiter is much more active, being of the solar sect, where Venus is the lunar sect. So if we think about that in those terms, we have Venus in the solar sign. So we have an active Venus that wants to kind of take action, that wants to kind of stand up for their beliefs. And we have the Sun also is really about, trying to come into our authentic expression. And Jupiter is usually a planet that is trying to take certain actions, but is in a receptive sign. Okay, it's in a sign that is like, okay, show up and just do enough possible, and then be able to receive the benefits of consistency. So I think that one of the things to think about is, yes, how can you express your authentic self with the sun in Leo 2? This is also very close to a fixed star called Dubhe. I think that's how you say it, Dubhe, which is in the constellation Ursa Major, which is the bear that's around the pole. And that fixed star is really about finding your calm center, your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, hibernation, things like that, like inner wisdom. So how can you find a routine that is supportive of who you are authentically around this period of time? And of course, Uranus has been shaking up our routines in Taurus, but Jupiter is asking us to formulate a new routine, a new way of valuing ourselves, right? A new way of like, how are we going to go about the work that we need to do? Again, this is going to be part of the rebrand energy of the month of August. I'm thinking of going through this as well. I'm putting together hopefully a larger offering for September with, I've been hinting at it, but I'm putting together a Deccan walk that I hope to do. It's a year-long program with people. And it's going to take I'm going to have to sell it in a slightly different way. It may be a slightly different price point than people are used to in my offerings. But this is part of the rebrand energy that a lot of us are going through, not just in our work, but in our other parts of our lives as well. Prudence is far north Alberta and saying usually doesn't get past 30 degrees here. Definitely noticing the heat the last 2 years. Yeah, everything's changing. Julene says it's brutal. Even though I'm a native here, I wasn't as hot when I was a kid. It's the building up and taking away of natural land that has made it feel so hot. Yeah. A lot of concrete, right? A lot of like asphalt and things adding to it, I would imagine. Human intervention. Okay, so that's the Jupiter Sun square. Again, I know this is a square, but Jupiter in the overcoming position is sort of like I've always kind of called that a little bit like a guardian angel kind of planet. It's saying, okay, take your time, slow down, only do what you need to do for that moment, and then pace yourself the rest of the way. Don't overdo it, is what is kind of the messaging I'm seeing with this period of time. Julian says what Spencer talks about regarding our natural resources and how it impacts life is real. Yeah, I mean, and it impacts us in different ways. In Julian's neck of the woods, they're really probably asking tough questions about the water supply. Like there's a very real possibility that they run out of water in the southwest of the United States and things of that nature. And how do you deal with the energy grid that is, when it's 118 degrees outside, people aren't hanging out outside without air conditioning. There's probably like so much energy being sucked in through the air conditioners there that the energy grid is being taxed quite heavily as well. And the real dangerous part about that is that when everyone's air conditioner is on 24/7, the infrastructure that we have in the United States is not set up to support that. And you experience brownouts, blackouts, and the power goes out. And when that happens, you're really fucked because you don't have air conditioning and that heat. That's when people start to get major heat stroke and die and have challenges like that. So not only is it a question of talking about it, how do we improve the infrastructure to be able to support the types of mitigations that we need to work through this as well. Okay, we get to the 8th. We're going to be experiencing the moon's going to be moving into Taurus. Okay, and if we go back a few degrees here, like let's go back a few hours. Okay, there is the applying. The moon is going to be conjoining Jupiter, which is nice. And then we're experiencing the last quarter moon phase. So this to me is a really interesting couple days. So last quarter moon, all of the topics that I was talking about with the second decan of Leo and the second decan of Taurus apply. But now we have the moon here to kind of help out. We have an exalted moon in its own face with Jupiter conjoining Jupiter, this is a time to, it's a release time. Like last quarter moons are a time of releasing, but both of the sun and the moon are in very powerful positions, with the moon in its exaltation and the sun in its domicile. I think this could be a really fertile time. It may necessitate changes as far as how you value yourself. But if you can release the limiting beliefs to your value around this period of time, that can really change things. I've been hinting at this on my channel, but I'm having to really change how I move through the world financially in the last few weeks, months, etc. We have some changes in our financial responsibilities with our home that are going to require me to do business in a little bit of a different way. And there's just been changes with our family and things like that. And I've been going through a lot of mental, I don't know if they're hoops, but I've been examining previous belief systems around my value. And, you know, just to be direct about it, I've had trouble valuing myself properly. I've made a lot of sacrifices, and quite honestly, I've given of myself more so than was probably appropriate or balanced. And I believe in generosity, but I also have to believe that what I do is of value and that there has to be an even energy exchange. And it's not because I'm like, oh, I just need to have all these resources. It's like, no, I have to meet my new responsibilities. And to meet those responsibilities, I have to change some of those limiting beliefs, which is honestly very difficult during some of these time periods that are calling on us to, what is the word? To pare down on some level too, right? As we are learning to live with less, how do we balance out the need to properly value ourselves with the need to understand that society is going through a little bit of a downsizing, I guess I would say. So there is a conflict between that. You know, there is a push and a pull between that I think a lot of us are trying to reconcile, is how do we meet our responsibilities, but in a way that is also cognizant of the needs to, you know, be a force for good in our communities as well. So I don't have a great answer to that yet, but I think that we all are going to live into the answers. But this moon Jupiter, again, when you have a waning last quarter moon, a lot of what happens in that lunar cycle is a letting go of the obstacles to abundance. So like, for example, I had this last quarter moon phase from moon in Taurus to Cancer sun. A lot of my life has been about how do I remove the rocks in the field, basically, of my life to be able to create success. How do I remove a limiting belief to be able to feel more confident in either my abilities or my value or things like that, to be able to meet the needs of the moment. Whereas if someone has a waxing first quarter moon or something, it might be more about manifestation. How do you add something in versus take something out? So I do think this particular setup on August 8th is about how can you remove some of the barriers to your ideas of value and abundance that will allow you to be a more authentic expression of yourself. Oh yeah, Don's saying, and the wonderful power companies like ours raise prices during the peak hours to 3 to 4 times what they are during non-peak hours. We can be of a higher energy, but yes, Don, that's happening in my community too with DTE. They've changed the energy prices. It's late stage capitalism is a real bitch, I will say. And I think that as individuals, all of us, every single person here is somewhat oppressed by those larger capitalistic corporate forces. And we have to kind of acknowledge that and have grace with each other as individuals, because those are power structures that we need to challenge. And again, we're not challenging individuals, we're challenging bigger power structures that are, and organizations to be able to, you know, give us some of our humanity back, right? Those types of big corporate interests are so soul sucking, and I think we need to move off of this growth mind, this unlimited growth mindset of a culture, or find different ways to grow that are sustainable and aren't so exploitive, I guess. Don says we can be of a higher energy, but we're here to live on the earth, and so we have to live within the paradigms of what we need, which requires physical money to live on. Yeah, it is true. It is true. I'm learning that as I grow older. I've willingly lived fairly close to the poverty line for a long time, and it is becoming untenable in my life. And like I said, I've had to make some changes to just be a functional human being and not put undue pressure on other people to either pick up the slack. A lot of the work that I do here, a lot of it, you should all thank Miss Tanya Andrews for some of the support that she gives, not only me, but like my ability to do this work. And, you know, some changes need to be made. Okay, let's move forward. Let's see here. Now we get to the 9th. We get to August the 9th. The moon is out of bounds. So after that meetup with Jupiter, the moon's going to be out of bounds from August 9th to August the 14th. And we have a pretty active day on August the 9th. Oh, wow. Carolyn says, California is doing one better. The electricity rates are dependent on income. If your income is greater, you pay more. That's interesting. That I kind of I like that. I like that there's some justice built into that. I'd have to learn more before I kind of understand if that's a good thing or not. But on the surface, it sounds like it is. Let's see. When we get to the 9th, we've got an out of bounds moon. Remember, when we have the moon out of bounds, we may be feeling a little bit more emotional. Our bodies may be feeling a little bit out of sync. We may be pushing ourselves a little bit harder than we normally would. And then we have to kind of pace ourselves during this period of time with out of bounds moon. But the main aspects that we're seeing around the 9th, we have our friend Venus making its second square to Uranus in Taurus. So what does that mean? Well, we're dealing with the third decan of Leo and the third decan of Taurus. So again, all of the things I've been talking about with Uranus and Taurus, and the need for innovation to meet the challenges of natural forces, or to meet the challenges of repairing systems that have fallen into disrepair or decay due to our previous decisions, are important here. So we may be going through that in our relationships as well. We may have to be really innovative about how we change the way that we relate to one another with Venus square Uranus. We may be getting some shocks related to the Taurus and Libra area of our charts. We're kind of going through a shift of consciousness during August, where we oftentimes during Venus retrograde, our desires really change, and we have to be careful that we allow for the people in our lives to go through some explorations as well, because it can be a confusing time when our values are changing. I think that the last time Venus retrograded in Leo was about 8 years ago or so, 2015. I was working at a camp for kids, like a nature camp for kids. And I was getting it feels very much like this time now. I was getting really passionate about nature and about trying to save the planet, and like trying to do things that were connecting me with the natural world. And I thought, you know what? I had a really nice experience when I was like 22 working at a day camp for kids. I should try that again. And I did it at age, what was I? I was like 35, going and being a camp counselor. I was working with much younger people. And it started off okay. And then it sort of went sideways. Like, I think that my it just didn't, I don't know what was going on there, but I was starting to feel like it wasn't what I thought it was, right? My values had changed. Like, I wasn't really feeling the same joy in that experience that I did when I was 22. So, but I had to revisit that experience to be like, oh, maybe this is what I want. And when I got in it, I've decided, this isn't what I want. Like, there's something else here that I was looking for. What I wanted was to connect with nature in a quiet, peaceful, solitary way. And just being around really noisy kids that I was starting to really lose my patience with wasn't working for me at that point in my life. And but it was instructive. So you see what I'm saying? It was something I thought I wanted. I needed to revisit it. I realized it wasn't for me, and then I moved on. And it helped me come into alignment with what I really did want, which was something different. So this is something to consider when we have Venus squaring Uranus and the Venus retrograde cycle, is you may be revisiting something that a new desire, or revisiting an old desire and getting clarity about it. Especially in Leo, you get clarity with the sun. It shows you, it shines a big spotlight on whether that is for you or not. So you may be feeling that as we go through this square with Uranus here. And sometimes it's a shock to the system. Sometimes our desires may really change. Like, this is the kind of thing where just be careful if you're like changing something with either your wardrobe or your body or something like that. It could be an erratic influence where after it's over, you could be like, why did I go do this? Why did I buy this weird color? Or why did I get this tattoo? Or why did I do this? There could be some buyer's remorse if you are, not taking your time and doing something rash around this period of time. So just be careful with that. Mercury is also going to be joining, Mercury is also going to be trining Jupiter around this period of time. So here is the trine between Jupiter and Mercury. Okay. I like this aspect. This is a really nice aspect for discussing how to bring our ideas into form and what resources we're going to need to do so. Mercury in the second decan of Virgo is very powerful. It is really about, that decan is the 9 of Pentacles energy, where we are learning how to take an idea or an essence and preserve it against the ravages of time, and use our artistic ability to put it and weave it into form. It's a Venus decan, okay, which is challenging in Virgo because Venus is in its fall in Virgo, okay? But it could be a great time to say, you know what, I need to figure out this resource or this skill. I need to make this plan to do what I need to do. The challenges with that decan, sometimes we can be working really hard that you might feel a little bit lonely. So there may be some times where you're really kind of grinding out some work around this period of time, and you're like feeling a little bit, like just like you've got your nose to the grindstone, and you look up and you're like, I've been working for 4 or 5 hours, and where is the time gone, kind of thing. But oftentimes I've realized that I've talked to people with this placements in this decan, and they're like, I don't mind that feeling. They're like, I don't mind working. I like my solitude. It allows me to weave, my vision without interruption and distraction. There's a spirit in that decan called the Moirai, and they were the weavers of fate. So this is about weaving something into reality. And the combination of Mercury and Jupiter could be discussing our plans to create greater prosperity. Okay, let's go on. You're here. There's nothing to fear. And I know that this live stream will go on. Sorry. Okay. Now, that is the end of Leo 2. So let's take that opportunity to take a stretch break Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you if you are still subscribed to the channel. If you're new and you like what you hear today, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, subscribe to my newsletter to keep updated when we're going to go live again. Please participate in the chat. I love hearing all of your thoughts and contributions. I love knowing that you're here and you're listening. I feel like all of you add so much to the conversation, and it really just fills my heart up that you're here with me here today. What else? If you want to make a material donation to the work I'm doing, there's a little $ in the chat. It's called Super Sticker or Super Chat. That can help us to, sorry, I'm going to get a snack here. If you trigger warning. That can help me keep the lights on here. And it helps support the work that I'm doing. I'm just looking through the chat here, friends, as I recharge the battery here for the second part of this. Today, I wish I could pause the video and go to the bathroom. But I don't think I'm going to do that. This is the challenges of live streaming for long periods of time. You get hungry, you have bodily functions, and you just have to power through it sometimes. And we're off the rails today, aren't we? Where's the moon today, Virgo? Which is weird. I'm just reading through the chat. Says Julene says, right on my Virgo stellium, I'll be at a square with my Gemini stellium, opposite my Pisces placements. The struggle is real. Luna, yeah, it is. I feel that. I have a Virgo stellium and Venus in Gemini, so I'm feeling that myself. Luna Storm says, I appreciate spending this time with us. Well, I appreciate you being here with me and Luna Storm. Thank you for that. Caroline says, is there a ship sinking somewhere? I don't know. Only my Mr. Rogers reputation. That's the only ship that's sinking today. Like funny. Let's see. Steven is listening in the background as you're doing household chores, washing dishes. Oh, that's good. Don says, that's not good for your body, Spencer. Well, yeah, I know. Maybe I will take a break. You want to take 2 minutes and have a bathroom break? Okay, we will. I wish I had like music, but I'll be back in a second. And we're back. All right. And I even washed my hands. Oh, friends. Oh, you all are so patient. Thanks for sticking around. All right, everybody can hear me again. I always get nervous when I stop the video or mute the audio that I'm back. So let me know in the chat if you can hear me and you're still here. All right, friends. That's going to make the last half of this much more relaxed. And I'm going to be, oh yeah, Prudence says Twitch streamers make a be right back screen that might be an option for the future. Yes, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that because I'll tell you what, I don't know how many of these shows I've done where I have had to pee for like the last hour of the show. And you're right, it's not good for your body. And we need to listen to our bodies, don't we? Okay, good. Okay, so let's dive back in. Let's talk about Leo 3. We've been talking about it, but let's see if there's anything else that we need to know. I'm going to show you the webinar slides for that, and then we will break it down. Okay, here's Leo 3. We see the 7 of Wands. We see, this is where I've been talking about defending your position, you know, holding your ground. You've come to a place of authenticity or a position of power. And in this Mars-ruled decan, people are going to be challenging that position. I will tell you, friends, much of my life as a Leo 3 rising has been trying to just be myself while people try to invalidate my experience. Like it's been quite a journey. Like when you start off life as a professional musician, a lot of people, your family, are going to be like, you're crazy, get a real job, blah, blah, blah. And it takes a lot of courage to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to keep doing this because it's important to me. Or like as an astrologer, when I first started doing professional astrology, people were like, what's that? You know, why are you doing this? It's weird. And you have to just kind of like say, no, this is kind of who I am and what I do and things of that nature. There is an energy to this decan of defending your authenticity. Now, I think the real challenge with this decan, in my experience, is how can you defend your authenticity without, first of all, without alienating everyone around you, number one. How can you express yourself in a way that is passionate, but also allowing other people to have their own beliefs and hills as well? That's been a tough lesson for me. As a young person, the passionate person that you saw here today, earlier in the show, was much more vocal and negative more often. I say that I don't always thank you, KP. Thank you for the super sticker. It says always take the bathroom break, don't suffer. Thank you, friend. I appreciate you. Thank you for the super sticker today. I would say when I was younger, I don't want to start a whole new like argument, but I was vegan for a period of time. And I know that some of you are vegetarian and vegan, and I respect your choice and your lifestyle. Eventually, that choice did not work for me anymore. But I remember when I was going through that, I became pretty militant about it. And a lot of it was because I cared about the animals and the planet and things like that. And I was experiencing some health challenges that made that no longer tenable, although I still try to practice ethical sourcing for my food and practice humane sourcing of that food. But again, I don't want to get in. Let's try not to get into yet another thing about that today, because I know that that's a topic that also people will get really fired up about. So if you're vegan and vegetarian, more power to you. If you're a meat eater, awesome. If you're pescatarian, whatever. There's so many different ways to eat and live, all right? My point being is that when I was younger, I sort of admonished everyone around me for not doing what I was doing, okay? And it made people really like not want to be around me, especially at the dinner table. So I was that guy for a little while. And I really had to learn that my life was just so much easier if I just was like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and you can do you, and that's okay, right? Instead of being like, I'm going to do this and you have to do it too because you're an asshole if you don't. Like, it was bad, because eventually I changed my mind. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if we get so entrenched in a certain belief or system or whatever, diet, belief, eventually when that belief isn't, reflective of your present, it is very difficult to back off of that. Like, so one of the things with Leo 3 is be very, very careful about making other people wrong if it is in alignment with what you consider is right. Okay, so this is part of how I will talk about Leo 3 to begin with. But some of the themes with Leo 3, courage and bravery, like this is the decan of where you have kind of your back against the wall, where you have to take desperate measures to fight your way out of like Helm's Deep or something like that, if we want to use a Tolkien reference. So defending your right to be, an unbreakable will. Netzach and Atziluth is a Kabbalistic tree of life interpretation of a Sephira. So knowing your why. Netzach is actually a Venus ruled Sephira. It is really about kind of values and knowing why what you're fighting for and why you're fighting for it. Fighting your way out of a corner. Spirit pushing past the natural limits of the body. That's important. As a young athlete, I would say I was an average athlete. I'm about 5'11", 140, 150 pounds back in the day when I was doing sports. I wasn't huge, but I wasn't tiny. I was quick, but I wasn't like uber speedster, but I had good reflexes. So I played hockey, and I was actually a very good skater. I was fast. That's why I survived for a period of time. And I played baseball and basketball and soccer. But my point is that despite being an average athlete, I was a crazy competitor. Like, if that makes sense. Like I would just grind myself to fucking bits competing. And I would push myself to like many injuries. Like as a baseball outfielder, I would chase down everything and dive for fly balls to the point where I separated my shoulder like so many times I can't even count. And I did the same thing as an adult softball player, which eventually I had to quote unquote retire from that because I just could not turn it off, right? As a hockey player, hockey was a good sport for me because you have little shifts where you can just completely go, I don't know, balls out, I guess, if you want to use a crass word for it, and then you go and rest. So this is sort of an energy of Leo 3 is you pushing those limits. I also tore my ACL playing basketball, and it was diving for a loose ball, and two people crashed into me and split my knee in a weird direction. So I've gone through this period where I've like started to have to learn to recognize my bodily limits. And this is still true in other projects that I take on, like the garden, for example. As a Taurus moon, as a Taurus anything, sometimes it's hard to get started, but it's hard to stop. Okay. Yeah. And Dawn says that Leo drive to be the best. Yes, I totally had that. And with my music too, like I would perform at coffee shops and I would do 3-4 hour gigs. I didn't know when to stop. I'd go to the point where I'd sing until my voice completely just gave out. You know what I'm saying? I had one gig. I remember doing this gig in Lansing at a coffee shop near the Michigan State University, where I was trying to hit this high note, and I pushed it so hard that I pulled a muscle on my back. Like, pulled a muscle like near my kidney, and it was so painful. But it was just, it is kind of that energy of laying it all on the line. And like with gardening, I sometimes have to know when to say when, right? I have to say, okay, I've done enough today. And with Leo 3, when the sun moves into this decan, you're going to have to know your limits. You're going to have to, yes, you have this drive to be the best and this drive to sacrifice for your beliefs and for victory, right? Or to be the best or whatever. But your body will eventually make you stop, as Luna is pointing out, right? So questions you can ask yourself during this period of time, which is roughly between August 12th and August 23rd. We have Leo 2 between August 3rd and August 12th. And now we're talking about the period of time between August 12th and August 23rd. What personal ideals are worth defending? There are certain things in life that I've had to step up to the plate and say, no, I have to go to battle to do this. I had for those of you who aren't familiar with the channel, I had a custody change with my daughter when she was 14 years old, and it was a really difficult experience to go through that and to go to court, and I got full custody of my daughter because she was in a challenging situation. But at the moment, that was a something that was worth digging deep to get her out of her challenging situation, and it worked, and she's doing well now. So what will you do when your back is against the wall? How can, a lot of the battles that we fight in Leo 3, we didn't ask for it. It comes to us, and we have to, like, that courage, that the banner is what Austin Coppock calls this decan, right? Like, what are the beliefs that you're willing to make a sacrifice for? What reserves of inner strength can you draw upon? How can you maintain the will to carry on? You're going to feel exhausted during this period of time if you're fighting for something you believe in. But there's always this extra something that I think it's interesting. I always have kind of a limited amount of energy in my normal life as a 12th house sun and Mercury, I think. But when I'm doing something like performing, or when I'm doing this work, like this is astrological work, there's just a switch that flips, and I'm able to draw upon some kind of energy to get through to the last, point. And you may have to tap into that energy when you're doing what is important to you during Leo 3 season. Is how can you tap into that last reserve of strength to carry on? You can also ask yourself, is it time to stand your ground or to concede the throne? Again, where have your beliefs shifted? Where has the reality shifted that isn't matching with your beliefs? That's important, okay? And then what inspires your faith in the times of darkness? One person that I share this Leo 3 rising with, unfortunately, and I don't even like putting myself in the same sentence with him, but is a guy like Donald Trump. And he also has Mars on the ascendant, which I don't have. And you could see it in the way that he didn't concede his election, right? The reality was not matching up with his belief, okay? And he was having really a lot of difficulty, and still has difficulty accepting the reality that he lost the 2020 election, okay? So the negative side of Leo 3 can be seen in that, where even when everything in your reality is saying that didn't happen, this is not, it's not worth trying to defend this position, you can really do a lot of damage and get yourself in a lot of trouble, which he is right now, trying to maintain that position when it is proven to be wrong. So be very careful with Venus retrograding in Leo 3, as the sun comes together with it too, that it's very important to know when to say when, okay? Yeah, Don says you have to admit he won't quit. He's like an Energizer bunny, he just keeps coming. Yeah, he does, and it's, I mean, you all know where I stand, like on the political spectrum, and I'm not a fan of him, so I wish he would go away. But yes, I do understand that energy being a similar rising. Right? Doesn't mean I support what he's doing, but I do understand it. So that's what I'll say about that, because we'll see if it can not have every single person who doesn't agree with me politically unsubscribe today. But again, we're gonna have different viewpoints on all this. I have a feeling that a majority of my audience tends to be a little bit more liberal, and I don't think everyone is. And again, I respect you as a human being if you have different political views than me. But we'll have to agree to disagree on Donald Trump, because he's not my favorite guy, even though we share a rising sign, Decan. Steven says, at least you're not orange like he is. Well, have you seen my profile picture that I use all the time? Sometimes I look a little orange in that one, so I don't know. I need a new picture. I've been trying to I've been dying on that hill of like, oh wow, that was a good picture. I'll use that one until I can't get away with it anymore. So I think I do look a little orange right now, but I digress. Okay, so let's go back to the chart. Try to bring a little levity to this. This has been an intense show. This is what I get for doing a forecast with Sun opposite Pluto and coming off of Mars, Saturn opposition. All right, so we get to August 12th. And actually, let's move to the 13th. This is really the defining, I think one of the defining moments of our Leo 3 season is the Cazimi of Venus in the third decan at 20 degrees of Leo. Okay. And this is something that, again, this is going to be probably the biggest transit that we'll see in this decan, aside from there's some number of big transits. There's a square with the sun to Uranus. There's a new moon in Leo, and then there's a trine with Mars and Uranus as well. But the Venus Cazimi is a moment of clarity. It's a moment where we really start to understand what is worth defending and what we need to let go of. How our beliefs and our values are affecting our identity. Okay. It may be the renewal that we need in the Leo part of our life, but also that renewal is going to have residual effects on the Libra and the Taurus areas of our life as well, because Venus rules both of those houses. Okay. And it witnesses both of those houses. So that's very interesting to see what is going to come of all of that in particular. Yeah, you all are commenting on the Trump stuff. I guess what I will say is maybe not all Leo risings have to be, authoritarian dictator wannabes. Although I have to catch myself every once in a while, friends, that there are some parts of that decan that I feel inspire a little bit of a my way or the highway type of being. And I have to be constantly aware of that. I also have a Sun Pluto square in my chart. So like power dynamics, I'm always constantly aware of that and trying to not fall prey to some of the similar pitfalls that I think that he has over the course of his life. And it just really takes a lot of self-examination. I think that's the biggest problem that our friend has there, is that he just cannot self-evaluate. And if he can, he just refuses to ever admit that he's wrong. And that's a real difficult place to be as a human being, because we're just not perfect, and we need to be able to admit when we're wrong. So this might be the moment in the cycle where we admit we're wrong, potentially. And that's okay. You're still worthy of love, even if your beliefs change, if your actions change, if you did something that worked in the past but isn't working now. It's just called adjusting and adapting. So try not to dig your heels in too much during this period of time. Sarah says, digging deep feels like such a useful phrase for our ascendant decan, but also for my second decan, Taurus, Moon, and Mars. Yeah, you and I share a lot of things in common, Sarah. Thanks for that. It feels so apt and familiar. Yeah, Sarah, we probably can be really stubborn sometimes, can't we? But again, like, this is why you keep working on yourself, and you keep working on your character. And I haven't always been an amazing person in every single aspect of my life, and I've had to work on changing. And every day is a new opportunity to make choices that are going to allow you to do better and be better, right? And sometimes you will learn a lot from the imperfections and the mistakes that you make. It's really important that we learn from our mistakes. This is something that I think Uranus and Taurus is really trying to teach us, is it's okay that we have made some mistakes in the past, as long as we're willing to do the work necessary to rectify it. Where the real evil starts to come in is when we know it's wrong, and we continue to do it. That to me is the definition of true evil. And this is why the climate change thing, like with the Republicans and trying to defund John Kerry's climate action committee, they know it's wrong. They know it, and they're still trying to do it. And to me, that makes it evil. And they see that their constituents are suffering, but they're so addicted to the greed and to their fixed position and to ignoring people suffering that they're willing to die on that hill, or honestly, it's not even that they're dying on that hill. They're allowing others to die, literally, not on hills, in deserts, in forests, in foreign countries, in domestic situations. They are allowing people to die because of that fixed position. And that to me is evil. So how can we release that? How can we say, it's okay? It's okay that we were mistaken. This is the humility part. And this is so important because we are seeing the sun also come into a square with Uranus. Change isn't always comfortable or easy. And we're going to have to be okay with feeling uncomfortable during this mid-section, or this end of Leo season, actually, this mid-August period of time. If you're feeling uncomfortable, join the club. We're all feeling some discomfort right now. And if you aren't, then you're extremely blessed and you're in some kind of bubble that I'm going to warn you, friend. It's going to come for you. You aren't going to be able to escape the changes that are coming. And I learned this the hard way. I tried to go escape society a few years ago during that same period of time that I was like working at the camp for kids. I was going through like the beginning of my Saturn perfection, or what was it? The level 1 Saturn zodiacal releasing year. That was like the first year. I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to go live on a farm off the grid and just completely leave this society that I don't agree with. And it didn't work. Like, no matter where I went, I was going to have to deal with the challenges of this interconnected world. For those of you who aren't familiar, we got 2 weeks away from buying a 5-acre farm in Michigan with a really messed up house that needed a lot of work. And we went in to start cleaning the house up because there was a bunch of junk left over. And we found a failed water test that led to the discovery that there was a toxic waste dump about half a mile upstream from the well that we would have been drinking from, that had never been cleaned up properly, that they were trying to clean up, but they ran out of money and it was still polluting that well. And we had to pull out of that deal. And it was a lesson to me that's like, you think you can go far enough afield to escape these things? You're wrong. That all of our actions are interconnected. So if you're very fortunate to not feel the worst effects of climate change right now, just understand that there's no escape for this, that it will find you. And it's finding us in the Midwest of the United States, which has traditionally been kind of a safe haven for weather disasters. Like, we don't usually have a ton of tornadoes where I live. We don't have hurricanes. We don't have super extreme heat. It gets hot, but not like Phoenix, okay? We do have winters, but we've been sheltered from some of that. And I've noticed in the last year or so, even in this summer, that the frequency of extreme weather events, extreme wind, tornadoes, extreme thunderstorms is increasing. And you need to be prepared for that. So at this period of time, there may be something that's happening, okay, with the sun and Venus squaring Uranus here and applying to that, where you may have something unexpected crop up. You may have to deal with you may have to dig deep for your courage, okay, to deal with a force of nature that is outside of your control. Oftentimes, the heroism, the courage that we see in Leo 3 is when we are responding to crisis. So there's potential that there might be some kind of weather crisis that we are going to have to respond to as a collective. Now, we're already seeing droughts, heat waves, things like that. If we continue on this, like let's say some of our food systems start to fail. Those are crisis situations that we are going to need to respond to and be flexible with to atone for the past actions that created this as a collective. And this may be true in your personal lives too. There may be things in the past that you did that are creating a situation that you're having to deal with now that may feel like a shock to your system. But here's what I will say. The shock to the system wakes you up. This was actually my hexagram for the day. My hexagram for the day was 51. Not for this month, but for my day personally. It was the shock. Like it was the shock that it's the thunder crack that like makes you aware of like, oh my God, there's a thunderstorm. But it inspires you to action. It inspires you to clarity. And this Sun squared Uranus might be one of those moments for us personally and collectively where we're like, oh my gosh, this is really serious. We are shocked into either action, awareness, and we have to dig deep for the courage to deal with it. Now, I would be, it's not always going to be the worst case scenario. I think that's really important to understand with some of these like things that look funky. But just because it's not the worst case scenario for you and the location that you're in doesn't mean that it's not a worst case scenario for someone else in a different location. And that to me has become very apparent as I've been trying to pay attention to not just my own area, but like what other people are going through as well, to be able to do this work and have it be of service to more people. Sarah says, oh yes, let's see. Yeah, Steven says change is never comfortable for the fixed signs. Yeah, no, it isn't. It isn't, but it's necessary. Don't just think of yourself as a fixed sign too. You're a human being. You need all of us need to change. You know, even the most fixed of us, we're all going through changes. Just look in the mirror and then look at a picture of yourself from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and then you'll understand. Sarah says, oh yes, very principled. It takes me a long time to come to a conclusion. Then it's intractable. Yeah. Well, try not to get too entrenched, Sarah. I feel you, and I'm similar, but we're all going to have to be flexible. Nanda Devi says, wasn't Trump born around an eclipse? Yes, he was. There was an eclipse over the Gemini Sagittarius axis around his birth. Sarah says, I have Sun opposite Pluto on my chart. Totally hear you. Lots of dad, dude overload energy in my ambient environment and history. So I really have an intense urge to cut that energy down to size. Yeah. Sun Pluto contacts, especially hard aspects like squares and oppositions in your charts, a lot of confrontation with power structures and especially authority figures. I've always been a little bit of a iconoclast when it comes to authority. I was a little bit of a terror as a young person. I was, my teachers, my poor father, like I was not going to surrender to anyone else's authority but my own. And I've gone through a lot of really challenging circumstances because of that. I've had a lot of things really good things that have come out of that. Like I've really tried to set my life up to be most of my own authority figure on some level, but there are certain things that are bigger than us, no matter how stubborn we are. And I think that this has been really tough for Leo people, especially as we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. A lot of the Leo people in my life, they're really struggling with the need to conform to a collective need versus an individual desire. And I feel you, Leo. I feel that on some level, but also, you know, you're talking to an Aquarius South node here. So I understand the need to have the collective be acknowledged. And again, you don't have to give up all of your authenticity and individuality to do something altruistic for your community. And you can still shine your light and be able to be a voice for the good. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is why I continue to do this in this Leonine way. It's because I know that it's not about me. It's about us. And you can be an intense leader spotlight person when that energy is in service of something bigger than yourself. And I think that when you're going through this square, you're going to have to tap into that this is bigger than me energy, okay? Especially with forces of nature. Dawn says, let me say first, I 100% believe that the things that should be done to help with climate change for sure, but do you not also think some of it is cyclical, like the Ice Age? Maybe. Some of it, maybe. Two of these truths can be a reality, Don. There could be cyclical changes, yes, but also the prevailing research, Don, is that we are in an era of history that they call the Anthropocene, which is the acknowledgement that human activity has an effect on our environment. And it would take an enormous amount of hoop jumping and head in the sand energy to look around and see that the collective actions of human beings, even within the last 100 years, haven't dramatically altered the landscape of particular ecosystems. I mean, we're just burning up fossil fuels at a rate that we've never seen in the Earth's history. And here's the thing, even if we are, this is where we can kind of meet in the middle, even if we say that, well, this is just part of the change. Hey, guess what? There are actions that we need to take immediately to survive, right? And adding more carbon into the atmosphere at a time, even if it is built into the system, is only going to accelerate our own demise. That's the thing that we have to realize with that. So, yes, overpopulation we may be getting to the carrying capacity of human beings on the earth. So I don't know what to do about that either. But people aren't willing to do that themselves. They want to blame it all on the corporations. Earth global. Okay. I'm just trying to process all these different comments coming in. I think that Dawn, just in response to your question, without belaboring this point too much, because we've gone down this road a number of times today. Personal responsibility is important. Taking as much action as you can for the collective is important. I think that this is a multivalent issue. It's not just one thing. It's not just fossil fuels. It's not just overpopulation. It's not just corporations. It's all of it. And a multi-pronged problem requires multi-pronged solutions. The corporations definitely have to be held accountable through regulatory ways, or they will not. That's been proven. These corporations are greedy, and they will continue to try to maximize profits at the expense of people. That's not an arguable position. Overpopulation is a problem too. We are living longer, well, until recently, but we need to deal with that as well. And yet we have laws that are being put in place that are making it more difficult to limit populations through lack of access to reproductive care in various states in the United States. That's also an issue. I mean, I don't have every single answer, Dawn, but we do need to acknowledge that we do have an effect on how things are going to go moving forward. I really do believe that. I believe that with all of my heart, that our actions have affected the changes that we're experiencing now. Now, am I a climate scientist? No, but I've done some of my, I hate this word, I've done some of my own research. Like, no, I'm just paying attention, because a lot of times people justify really off the wall, viewpoints by quote unquote doing their own research, and where does that come from and everything like that. But people who are paid to do this work have been sounding this alarm for 4 decades plus. I remember Al Gore really talking about this a lot back in the day. I think I was talking about this with my partner, that election with Bush and Gore was a real big tipping point. I think that at that point there was less resistance to some of the changes that we were talking about now. People were less entrenched and politicized around it, and that could have really shifted some of the experiences we're having, but that was a huge loss. But now we have to just deal with those ramifications. Painted Turtle says, lack of resources via climate change coming is something we could all have felt during the pandemic. Even those with money could not maneuver the prevailing lack of essentials and comforts and services. Yeah, absolutely. Sarah says, totally, I'm being self-effacing, but thank God that Venus in mutable Gemini rules those Taurian placements. Yeah, me too. Me too, Sarah. That's what some of our saving grace is, right? Is the mutable planets that are ruling some of our fixed stuff. Prudence says, grew up in oil sands in Alberta, and they've wrecked the environment here more than our personal actions can fix. Yeah, it's true, because of short-sightedness, for sure. Chandrika, thank you for your super sticker. I appreciate you and this little fox that we have here. Luna says, Jerry Brown talked about it in the early 70s. Absolutely. There was a lot of talk about how human beings affected the environment. And you can even see this. Like take something like DDT for an example. DDT was something they used to spray on a bunch of crops, and it made the eggshells of birds like eagles really thin so that they couldn't come to term. And we saw the eagle populations go way down. And then when we finally banned that stupid chemical, oh, guess what? The eagle population started to rebound because their eggshells weren't super thin. So we have to take responsibility. I'm going to keep, again, this is the hill I'm willing to defend. Anyway, but let's keep having the talk. I mean, I don't have every single solution. I'm just some guy on the internet talking about astrology. Maybe it's hubristic of me to think that I can make all these changes myself, but I just have to keep continuing to talk about it. If nothing else, it causes you to think about it and maybe go look some more things up, then I think that I will feel good about where I'm at today and for initiating the conversation. Chandrika says, I'm going through a hard breakup with a person who has a Leo 3 Mars and Uranus. Oh boy. No self-reflection or ability to admit he is wrong. Thank you, Spencer, for your wisdom. Yeah, that's a tough spot. That's the Trump position, right? Mars and Leo 3, and he doesn't have Uranus there, I don't think, but that's an even more volatile position. So hang in there, friend. That's a really powerful Mars, because Mars rules that decan. So Mars has extra strength there. And when aroused, it can be very difficult for a person with that Mars to see someone else's point of view. So just hang in there, and I hope that you're finding ways to practice your own self-care and get the help that you need if you need to move away from that relationship. Yeah, Dawn, I'm not. Again, anyone who disagrees with me isn't like on my shit list or anything. So I love that everyone has a different perspective. And Carol and Dawn, I still love you, and I don't even think we're disagreeing on a lot of these things. We're just coming at it from a slightly different direction, right? It's so hard to get nuance on the internet too. So if I ever take someone's comment out of context, or if I take it a way that isn't meant to be taken, I apologize. And we're doing the best we can trying to communicate in an imperfect communication system. Okay, so that is the Venus Cazimi, a renewal of Venusian values. We're seeing the square to Uranus on the 15th at 23 degrees of Leo and Taurus, respectively. Venus is going to emerge as a morning star on the 23rd as well. Wait, no, it's not going to. Never mind. That's a different time. I have that written out wrong in my notes. It's going to emerge as a morning star at 14 degrees of Leo, and I'll show you when that happens. Let's just go forward real quick here. So let's get Venus to 14 degrees of Leo. So that's around August 24th. Okay, so the changes that you're making at the Kazemi of the 13th, or the downloads that you're receiving, you may start to see them visibly around the 24th, okay, in your worlds, all right? Venus will station direct on September the 3rd at 12 degrees of Leo, so keep that in your mind as part of the Venus synodic cycle as well. Let's get to the 16th, because here we have a new moon. So here's the new moon in Leo 3. Oh, thank you, Callie, for the super sticker. I appreciate you. So there is the moon and the sun at 23 degrees of Leo. Venus is still retrograde, still under the beams. It's going to be very close to this square with Uranus. So if you didn't feel the shakeup of your belief or your entrenched position when the sun exactly squared Uranus, you're probably going to feel it quite acutely at this new moon in Leo. So this is squared Uranus. The good news is that Jupiter is overcoming this lunation. Again, I told you that's like a guardian spirit. If we follow the directives of Jupiter, I think we'll make it out of this challenging period of time. So what does Jupiter in the second decan of Taurus want again? Consistency, generosity, not getting too, not hoarding our resources. I've learned with a moon in this decan that when I share, things come to me, right? When I hold on too tightly to a belief, to a resource, to knowledge, then I cut off the flow. So if you want to make it through this lunation cycle, generosity, consistency, patience, being able to do what is necessary each day, and then allowing yourself some rest and recreation, like it can feel very overwhelming in these times when we're seeing all these crises happening simultaneously. And I'm guilty of this too. Like I speaking of like the projection thing, I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I was like, what are kids on college campuses doing about climate change? What's the energy grid like at your school? Like what are they doing? She was like, I don't know, I'm just trying to, like, keep my scholarship and survive. And I was just getting like really worked up about it. And so you have to kind of pace yourself with these things. Yes, we do need to be vigilant, and we do need to start taking action and really get up off of our, we need to overcome inertia, but we also need to take time to relax, and we need to take time to recharge the battery to have the strength to keep going. This, like we were talking about the sports metaphor earlier. If you're taking a shift on the ice, if you're a hockey player and you just skate until you just can't even stand up anymore, you got to go take a rest on the bench for a little bit, or you're just gonna be useless moving forward. So this might be another time too, where to balance out the needs of the moment, you're gonna have to treat yourself well and your body well, and take some time out to know why you're doing what you're doing. For me, I take time out every morning now to take a walk in my garden, to take a walk in the wildflower garden. I look at all the bees and the bugs and the butterflies and the birds. I take that in so that I know why I'm gonna go on my channel today. I was out there this morning after a storm, assessing the damage. There wasn't a ton of damage. The bee balms got uprooted and all knocked over with the winds. There were 60-mile-an-hour winds here yesterday. But I've replanted them, and I took in all the beauty, and I said, this is why I'm willing to speak up on my YouTube channel today, and maybe even make some people upset, but hopefully to inspire them, because I just love this earth. I love the beauty of these flowers. I love seeing the bees doing their thing, and the animals. Like, I have a squirrel friend in the back that I greet semi-daily now. And so you got to take some time to smell the flowers and to appreciate, so that you know what it is that you're trying to work towards. You have to keep that in your mind. When you're going through crisis, you have to keep in your mind the vision of what you would like to create, that you're getting the contrast to. So important, because that is what the vision that will make you so powerful when the time comes to dig deep for that courage. That's what fuels the courage. It's not, don't let fear fuel the courage. Let love fuel the courage, without putting your head in the sand and just saying everything's fine, right? Acknowledging the crisis, but letting love fuel the courage rather than the fear. Okay, what's up, Monique? My friend Monique's stopping in. How you doing? Luna says my lemon balm seems indestructible. Yeah, you know what's cool? My plants, besides a few things that had like kind of blown over, all the native plants I planted were in really good shape. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing about planting things like native pollinators and stuff, is that they are more resilient. They can withstand drought. They can withstand wind. There's a reason why we're trying to shift into those types of landscapes, okay? Is that they are more resilient because they were made for these places, right? Rather than these invasive species that we've brought in because they're pretty or because we just didn't know any better. All right, Carol. Carol's taking off. Gotta feed the cat. Catch you later. Nice. Thank you for humoring me and being here today. Thank you, Chandrika, for your support here as well. Painted Turtle says, I purposely didn't get my license until later on to force myself to use public transit, live within walking distance of resources, and held myself accountable for future generations. That's awesome. I mean, those are the little actions that add up, right? Those are, and everyone's going to have different things that they can and can't do, right? Like some people are going to be really comfortable on public transit, and that's going to be one of their contributions, right? Other people maybe have the physical privilege or ability to go out and do a bunch of physical labor in their yard to switch it over to pollinator habitats. I'm lucky enough that my body works well enough to do that. Some people can't. Some people's bodies aren't able to do something like that. So we're all going to have to play different roles within this, and that's it takes a village, right? It's going to take a global village. So any little thing that you can do that's contributing is worth it. And don't ever minimize your actions. They will have an impact. If everybody does that, they will add up. Chandrika says, let us lead from love, forgiveness, and empathy. Yes. Oh, say it louder. And for the people in the back, friend, it's so hard to do sometimes. We're so trained by our narratives, whether it's through, I don't know. I don't want to be too down on quote unquote the media, because I find that mindset has led to a lot of people being in echo chambers. But it is true that some forms of media do promote fear. At the same time, the media also can keep us informed. So I don't want to go to the extreme of saying, just don't watch the news, because that is a privileged position. Again, that is, I don't think, a good one, because we do need to stay aware of what's going on in our communities. And when media is done right, it serves, it's a public service to the people. Okay, so, but yes, we have been trained to fall prey to the more dramatic expressions of fear. And if we can start to shift back to love and forgiveness and empathy, like you're talking about, Chandrika, we'll all be less stressed, I think, and we'll be able to find solutions rather than, you have to keep your composure in a crisis. And that's really important as we move forward in Leo season. It's really important. This is, I think, what Jupiter is saying, is composure is super important. If you lose your head during these periods of time, you're not going to be as effective as you could be. And I apologize earlier for getting so fired up. I hope I didn't lose my composure to the point where you didn't feel safe, because we do need to maintain our centers around this. I think that for me, it's just a lot of emotions were spilling out, and we can have those moments as long as we come back to center and continue. It's work to come back to center. Come back to center. That's why spirituality is a practice. That's why meditation is a practice. We're practicing coming back to center. Prudence says, yes, I've been switching our lawn to clover for the flowers and how well it is doing with less water. Yes, we talked about that earlier. Prudence is awesome. I'm going to go do that this weekend too. I've been meaning to buy some clover stuff, but I have a porch full of pollinator plants that I bought in like February. I bought way too many for one season. I have like 120 plants that I'm trying to make space for and I feel a little overwhelmed, to be honest with you. But yeah, and we did one part that was just seed too. But yes, the clover lawn is a great simple solution. Even if you just go buy a bag of either mini or regular white Dutch clover and start spreading it in your lawn, eventually the clover will take over and choke out the other grass, and it'll be a more drought resistant, greener lawn throughout the hot summer months, that is able to be walked on, able to be played on, that also has flowers for the bees. It's just such an easy fix, in my opinion. So if you're send me your pictures, send me the transitions of your lawns and of your flowers and things like. I love seeing like that. So it inspires me. I would love to see the sharing and hear about it as well. Stella says, I appreciate you talking about this stuff. I'm the only one on my street that cultivates the natural plants and gets backlash for it. So it's nice to hear some similar views. Yeah, stay strong, Stella, because we are fighting a little bit of an uphill battle with some of this. My neighborhood was one of the first bee safe neighborhoods in Michigan, Ypsilanti, the Normal Park neighborhood here, where people went around and made a commitment to not using chemicals on their lawn and to transitioning to some native plants. And it's just really inspiring. There's just so many people doing it in this neighborhood that it will catch on. The more that you show the advantages of it, and how the fear that they have is really based on just a belief that isn't, just not serving anyone anymore. Like we had a person talking about needing some lawn for their grandkids, which is a legitimate concern, right? There is some use to that, but we found a solution here today where replacing the lawn with clover can be earth friendly and also serve the purpose of having a place for kids to play on. So there are solutions. We just have to keep talking about it, and we will hit upon it. Rachel says, thank you for lifting up that viewpoint. Some media outlets can be extremely fear-based, but there's so much good journalistic excellence and fact-finding. Yes, Rachel, yes. We demonize the media, and we go to an extreme where we're not hearing the real stuff that we need to hear. So again, I would point you towards allmedia.com, I think, or .org, where they talk about media bias, and they give you stories that are from all different political viewpoints, so that you can use your own discernment to be able to draw the essence out of it. I find that a media outlet like Reuters tends to be fairly objective. So that's where I get a lot of news from, and also the All Media site. Apple News there's just a lot of crap on there, and you can't even access half of it unless you subscribe. But yes, ask where your news is coming from, but don't put your head in the sand and ignore things going on in the world around you, because they do affect you, and your actions will affect other people. This is super important. And thank you, Julene, for your super sticker. I appreciate you, friend. Thank you so much for that support. It really does support the work I do here, and I appreciate you. Luna says, I keep buying too many plants too. I try to rescue the half-price plants on sale. Yeah, that's a hard lesson as a gardener, is sometimes learning that less is more, right? It's so hard to do. Don says, people are so entrenched that you have to have grass. It's hard down here. My husband is so close-minded to clover and regular plants. Yeah, I don't understand the clover thing, because it looks nicer than grass, especially as we get into the point where the grass is just going to start to die unless you spend literally hundreds of dollars watering it every month. So if you can't convince them just from the old things, try to do it from a financial place, right? Say, hey, it's cheaper. I had this conversation with my neighbor the other day. I was like, hey, he's a landlord, and he has a house that he's maintaining. And I was like, look at all the natives. You should pull out your grass. And he's like, yeah, as long if I can because he has his son come over to like mow it, and I'm like, well, you can save your son the work, and I'm like, I don't know if you pay him or not. He's like, oh, I pay him, and he charges a lot. I'm like, well, you save yourself some money, right? You can water it less; it'll look nicer. So if you can't convince people just based on belief alone, talk about the benefits financially to them, because there are financial benefits to getting rid of the grass and just putting in something that's equally as good, if not better. I'm trying. Tarot Destroyer, welcome. Okay. Stella says, so far half of my lawn is all violets. Ooh, that's cool. And nice green ground cover with some clovers. So if violets are something in your area, that could be an alternative for folks. Yeah, I have some of those in my yard. I also have these little purple flowers that come up in the spring. I think they're called Siberian squill or something like that. They're so pretty. And there's a ton of those in our yard too. Yeah, well, good luck, Tarot Destroyer, with the talk with your husband. Well, you know what you could do too? I hate to be like so guerrilla about it, but you could just buy some clover and just start spreading it in your yard and just see what comes up. You know what I mean? I follow this guy on Instagram who's like in San Francisco, and he's like a guerrilla wildflower seed spreader. He gets wildflower seeds in a shaker, and he has like a skateboard, and he just goes and spreads it around little city places, and I just love that. Okay. Is Tarot Destroyer a bot? Yeah, that's interesting. That's weird, isn't it? I don't know what this comment is with all this. We'll see, Tarot Destroyer. If you're a bot, if you're botting, I will give you a timeout. But anyway, let's keep going. Let's see what they do here. Maybe they won't. Okay. So we're at August 16th. We got to kind of get through this here. We're at the 3-hour mark. I know we've had an awesome conversation today. I could talk all day long about native pollinators and clover lawns. I love that this is part of this. For those of you who came for the astrology, I'm sorry that we got on so many digressions, but let's finish up some of the astrology here. We can do it. I know we can. So this new moon, we have the host, the sun, is in its own domicile, really powerful for authenticity. We have Mars making a trine to Uranus. So we might be able to start taking some actions to be able to preserve things against the ravages of time. That third decan of Virgo in particular is very much concerned with preservation and legacy. Whereas we have an artistic decan with the second decan of Virgo, the third decan is Mercury ruled, and it is really about deciding what we're going to pass on and what we're going to return to the earth. So there might be some ideas about what we're going to have to let go of versus what we preserve around this period of time as well. The first aspect that we have after this new moon is a trine from the moon to Jupiter. Okay, so we're going to have the moon in Virgo trining the Jupiter in Taurus. So that's really positive. That gives me some hope for this new moon, that there's some really positive actions that we take. We also have a super, super strong Mercury. Okay, so like Mercury is in its own domicile and exaltation. So the Mercury things are really supported during this period of time. Julian says, I came for the sports. We haven't talked a lot of sports today, but NFL training camps are starting. We can get me on another hour-long digression if you want, Julie. But yeah, I digress. I'm following along with the Packers, and we'll have to get our fantasy football stuff going, won't we, Julene? I think Jolene's in a fantasy football league with me somewhere. Caroline says Epoch Times is a great perspective. Yeah, I don't know much about that organization. I will have to look into that, but always check your sources. And again, the all media bias chart is really important as far as like how to discern whether something is, extremely right wing or left wing or something like that. And sometimes it's not always easy to tell with some of these things. So always kind of understand what the bias is of the media that you're consuming and try to find the most objective, I don't know if centrist is the right word, but the most objective source that you can, that's just reporting the news without the filters that we all are putting on it, like that everyone wants to put on it. Okay. So this Mars-Uranus trine, innovative solutions to passing on a legacy, innovative solutions to being able to sort through and to prepare for the future. That's also going to be part of this Leo new moon in the third decan of Leo. A couple more aspects that are going to be perfecting in Leo 3. On the 19th, the sun is going to be trining the north node. So we talk about Leo at the squaring of the nodes, which I think it is doing today and tomorrow as I record this. It's probably another reason why this live stream today has gone in a interesting direction. But with the Leo sun trining the north node, we may be able to feel like we've really kind of had an epiphany around our authenticity, especially with the conjunction of Venus and the sun. Now that it's trining the nodes, we might be able to take action in alignment with our beliefs, and so that we know what is worth defending and what is worth letting go of at that point. When we get to the 22nd, okay, let me release this stuff here. When we get to August 22nd, we have two somewhat challenging aspects, one more challenging than the other. First of all, we have Venus retrograde squaring Jupiter. Okay, so there's a square. Simultaneously, we have Mars opposing Neptune. Okay. So two hard aspects, one with benefics though. So hard aspects with benefics, not as challenging as hard aspects with malefic planets generally, but we can have too much of a good thing. So I guess be careful with Venus squared Neptune or Venus squared Jupiter, that you aren't overdoing something, that you aren't like getting so attached to the parade of the Six of Wands that you're trying too hard, I guess, on some level. We also can get really attached to our physical needs around this, where we're overdoing it in that regard. Like Jupiter is going to expand our desire to be appreciated around this period of time. I think that's one thing like that Leo 2 talks about, is we want to feel appreciated for our efforts. So try not to get too attached to that, especially with the sun on Regulus here before we switch over to Virgo. And Mars opposite Neptune. I honestly think we could be kind of tired around this period of time. Also, Mars-Neptune aspects, for me personally, my anecdotal experiences, just drains all the energy out of me. Our actions we could be trying to pass on a legacy and figure out what stays and what goes, but Neptune is really challenging us to have a reality check about the why and what crusades we're willing to take on, and do we really need to get involved in this or not? So I guess pace yourself around this end of Leo period. A lot of times what I find in this period of time is this is when we're getting prepared to send kids back to school and things like that, if you have kids. And like it can be a really it can be a time where we're really trying to organize our lives in a new way to get a new routine, and sometimes that can be really disruptive and exhausting. So I would suggest trying not to overdo it, especially if you're like trying to get in like one last like vacation or one last recreational thing before the Virgo season starts. Pace yourself around it. Try not to overdo it, because you could find that your energy is just not up for it at this period of time. Okay, let's talk about Virgo 1. Oh my goodness, we still have Virgo 1 to go. let's take a time out here and stretch. And I'm going to get a snack real quick because I think my blood sugar is getting low. So friends, take this opportunity to like and subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, I might need some of you new subscribers because maybe I might have alienated some of the old ones today. If this is something that resonates with you, share it with your friends. You know, if there's something that, you know, maybe there's a new way that I've described something today that might help to shift the tide of a belief or something like that with a friend they're having a challenge with or something like that, or with a family member. Please like the video, subscribe to the newsletter. I appreciate the super stickers and the super chats today. If you want to contribute, there's a little $sign in the chat. That can really help me to keep the lights on here. And excuse me for chewing. I just need some calories. Monique is asking, oh, what did I do? So if you joined late, we've been having a really passionate discussion about climate crisis. And I got really fired up about the grief and anger I have at the apathy in our political system towards protecting our planet. And I wasn't super nice about it for a period of time. So I'm sorry about that. But what we're learning on this channel is the lesson of authenticity. And authenticity doesn't always mean being nice. Authenticity sometimes means bringing up difficult topics. It doesn't mean you have to be a dick. It doesn't mean you have to be mean or disparaging to someone personally. But sometimes being authentic means speaking your truth. And we've been doing that more on this channel lately. And hopefully that'll bring in a new audience. It's gonna drive some folks away, and that's okay. Can't please everyone all the time. But I hope that you appreciate the journey of authenticity that we all are going through here, myself included. We're just learning how to adapt and adjust and feel our way through these times. We feel our emotions on this channel, sometimes in real time. They're strong emotions sometimes. Yeah, Monique says, sorry, not sorry. Yeah, I'm not really that sorry about the views that I've expressed today. I always try to consider whether I've expressed my views in a way that is productive. So if I ever fall short of that glory, that's what I'm truly sorry for. If I haven't communicated in a way that is graceful, I'm not apologizing for the belief. I always try to evaluate whether the message is delivered in a way that is able to be received. And that is always a work in progress. And that is what I think I'm feeling today, is that I'm trying to figure out the best way to express some of these things. And it's not easy, especially when I have strong feelings. If any of you have Mercury in Cancer or a Mercury water sign, oftentimes you're trying to get your thoughts out and communicate your thoughts through like layers and layers and layers of feelings. Like you're trying to like scream underwater sometimes. And it is it is hard to figure out how to communicate in a more airy, objective way. And again, I'm not always going to succeed in that. But you heard a little bit of the Leo fire today on this Sun opposite Pluto expression. Yeah, it was an expression of Sun Pluto opposition, and we were trying to be constructive with it, which is a really difficult aspect, friends. Really difficult aspect. It's a tough one where we're shining the light on power structures that are not effective anymore. I mean, you just want to understand the astrology of like what's going on today. I mean, you can look at my astrology of July, but just to recap, Sun is in Cancer 3, having us feel our emotions. Pluto is in Capricorn 3, which is we're shining a spotlight on the corruption of a political system on some level. And the talk today has gone in the direction of shining a spotlight on some of the corruption in the larger macrocosm organizations that are making it difficult to create legislation to actually solve the problem. Like we were talking earlier, Monique, about some Republican lawmakers that were actively trying to block, like literally writing bills to defund climate change committees that were working on trying to, reduce carbon emissions and things like that. So like actively working against it rather than just ignoring it, which made me very upset. So let's talk Virgo 1. Are the rates better for you on the Buy Me Coffee or YouTube? I'm not sure. I think it's 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. So either one I'm appreciative of. So you decide what is best if you want to make a contribution. I think they always take roughly like 3 or 4%, but yeah, either one I'm grateful for. The best way to support me is to sign up for a reading or buy a Decanic webinar or something like that. But the donations that I receive on this channel really do help, and I really do appreciate it. So keeping it real. Spencer Michaud Astrology. Okay, let's talk Virgo, and let's wrap this up for the day, because we're going on 3.5 hours, and I'm running out of steam. So on the 23rd, we're going to be seeing the sun moving into the first decan of Virgo. So let me just show you my Decans of Virgo webinar preview. Because we're just going, we're having discussions about current events. We're learning astrology. There are classes, there are community forums. It's just, we do all sorts of things here on this channel. We do jokes, we have snacks. Here's Virgo 1. Here we see the 8 of Pentacles. So we see a figure who is working very hard at their craft, very focused on the details of their craft. So we have themes of apprenticeship, focus, learning the laws of incarnation, which is related to Virgo. A lot of the goddesses that I talk about in this Virgo Decans webinar, which was actually the first one that I did, talk about a goddess coming down to earth and trying to teach people about the laws of being incarnated into a body. So I have Jupiter in this decan, for example. So a lot of the talks that I do are related to teaching what is possible in physical reality and what isn't. Those are themes that are important to me. And I find that I create success in my life through continuing to learn. So this is a decan of like lifelong student, something like that. So you may have an awareness of skills or your lack of skills during the sun's period during this time. This is a solar ruled decan. So that's an awareness of the work that needs to be done. You may be questioning or having skepticism about something. So questions you can ask during this solar period, which is roughly from August 23rd to September 2nd. But we're going to just talk about the first, the August part of this. So what is possible? What isn't? Okay. What is realistic? What isn't? What skills do I need to learn to manifest spirit into matter or form? That's important. Mercury is really, I think, a lot about the skills necessary to move energy around. This is what you see in the Magician card that's associated with Mercury, is you've got all the things that are able to move around energy. And sometimes we have to develop those skills. This is what a Virgo type person might be doing, is they're constantly refining those skills, okay? And some of that comes through a sense of disgust and dissatisfaction. I think it's not even perfectionism with Virgo, because they have a very well-developed disgust mechanism. And that's important. And sometimes it gives Virgo a bad rap because Virgo is assessing the value of things a lot of the time. Like Mercury is a merchant, right? Is a merchant planet. So sometimes we have to be able to identify the flaws in things to be able to know whether it's worth preserving against the ravages of time or whether we need to return it to the earth. Okay. But you have to be careful when the sun moves in this decan that you don't overdevelop that disgust mechanism. It is important to acknowledge what is of value rather than feel the disgust, because those goddesses in Virgo, they felt so much disgust with what was going on in Earth that they were like, I'm out of here. You know, there's stories of like the goddess leaving the planet. And you may, if you have Virgo placements, unfortunately, there's stories of like suicide in this decan and this sign in particular, and this feeling of like, I don't want to be here anymore. So if that's something that you struggle with, if you have Virgo placements, know that you are not alone, and that there are things out there to help support you through those challenging periods of time. Okay, so this is something I know that can be triggering, but there is this need to leave something that is out of alignment with our values and beliefs with Virgo. It doesn't have to be the physical plane altogether. Okay, but it could be situations, right? Where like, I'm out of here. I don't want to waste my time. A lot of Virgo people, like, you sit at a party or something, like, this is a waste of time. This is how I felt when I was earlier. Hold on a second. I think we do have a bot here. And I'm going to put that user in timeout. There you go. So we have to make sure that, like I was saying, like when I went to parties when I was younger, I was like, I could be working on my songs right now. I could be practicing guitar or something like that. I could be reading, like, and I had trouble enjoying myself because I was always like, I could be doing this. I could be, and that's a feeling that we have to be balanced about, right? Like wasting our time. Because sometimes recreating is not a waste of time. It's actually really important for recharging our well and making connections with other people and things of that nature. Uh-oh. How is this happening? Sorry, this is another Pluto-Saturn, or Pluto opposition. We have a bot or something in the chat that I'm having to take care of. We don't have our moderator today. I'm the moderator. So questions you ask yourself: what skills do I need to learn to manifest spirit into form? How do I begin to sort through the harvest? Okay. So Virgo is the harvest season. So we have all of the challenges of being able to take the abundance that we spent time growing through the solar season, through the Leo season, through the summer season, through the Cancer season, okay? And what are we going to do with it? How are we going to preserve it for the winter time? Are we going to, it takes work to do that. And we feel this is part of the anxiety of Virgo that comes in, is that we're like, oh shit, the winter's coming. We have all this abundance. We have all these resources. How do we, make it through the winter? How are we going to preserve all this abundance? Okay, so those are some of the questions that you may have. You can also ask yourself, what are some of the gifts that you have? You could, while also identifying some flaws that you want to improve or work on, without going too far about it, okay? How do I consolidate this abundance? That's what I was talking about preserving the harvest against the ravages of winter. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of Virgo 1. It's important to listen to your intuition too. Like I would say that Hermes is in its kind of psychopomp phase, where we're having to go into the underworld and understand how to listen to our inner voice and our inner guidance. There's a Decan spirit with that. I believe that one is called Themis, who is the voice of the oracle. So there is some significations with Virgo associated with the third house in the Thema Mundi, which is the joy of the moon. Oh, we're going to fight battles today in our chat, aren't we? And we are working on understanding the intuitive voice that arises from within, which is also a result of being able to be aware of our circumstances. And I'm going to do something here. My friend Monique, if you are still here, I'm going to make you a moderator. And if you see Tarot Destroyer come back, can you delete their messages and put them in timeout? You'd be doing me a huge favor, because I'm fighting the bots in the chat here today. So let's look at the chart. So this is August 23rd, and we're going to see the sun moving into Virgo. Yeah, Monique, if you have a little wrench by your name now. So if you see someone spamming the chat, click on the little 3 lines next to their comment and remove them or put them a timeout or hide them from the channel. Okay, so there's just a little thing that you'll be able to do. You'll be able to remove their comment and put them in timeout and whatnot. And that would do me a huge solid for the last couple. Okay, good. All right. Oh, well, we'll make it through here, friends. Sorry for the spam bots or whatever the hell's going on in the chat. I'll try to take a look at it, and we'll have a 2-pronged approach to it. So you see that the sun's moving into Virgo on August the 23rd, and we have a really powerful host for this sun in Virgo. Okay, hold on. So we have Mercury in the 3rd decan of Virgo applying to a conjunction with Mars, hosting the sun. So this may be the time that the rubber is just really starting to meet the road, where we are able to take action. We're going to need to reskill a little bit, but we have a Mercury that is really concerned with passing on the legacy. So you can be motivated by a really strong Mercury during this period of time, where your powers of discernment could be very strong. So this is going to inform our sun in Virgo 1. Now, we have a whole bunch of relationships that shift when the sun moves into Virgo. So we won't have as much of the squares between Jupiter and Uranus. Now we have the sun moving into a trine to those 2 planets. But we do have the sun starting to move into an opposition with Saturn. So this is kind of the shift that we're experiencing here. Now the sun's going to be hitting the roadblock that Mercury and Mars were running into earlier. The other thing that's happening on this day is that we have Mercury stationing retrograde, okay, a few hours into the day. There it is. Okay, so there's Mercury stationing retrograde around 4:30-ish Eastern time. So this is an important time for reviewing how we work through our systems, what we are trying to do to preserve something or let something go. That's something I wanted to keep in mind, is that it's just as important in the 3rd decan of Virgo to learn what we need to release. This is why Venus is so troubled in this decan, because Venus is trying to hold things together. Whereas, this is something where we're trying to ask questions, so we're trying to separate things out into categories. When Venus is in this decan, think of like someone who's trying to get, I don't know, just like a lot of like either like plastic surgery or something to turn back the time, turn back the clock. Okay. So this is something where you could be taking a lot of weird supplements that could be detrimental to your health to try to preserve your youth or something like that. So that's why Venus doesn't do so well there. But when we acknowledge that time is finite and that we have to let go of things, that's when we're doing Virgo 3 correctly. So that's where Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde. And it's very close to a fixed star called Denebola. And Denebola sort of challenges us to do things in a way that is outside the norm. It's sort of like a rebel fixed star on some level. Think of like a punk rock type of experience. So maybe you'll have to do things in a slightly different way and review the way that you've been doing things in the past. Just to give you some timing on the rest of this Mercury cycle, it's going to station retrograde on the 23rd. It's going to go under the beams of the sun on the 28th. And then its cazimi is going to be at 13 degrees of Virgo on September the 6th. It's going to station direct at 8 degrees of Virgo on September 15th as it emerges as a morning star. Venus retrograde is also emerging as the morning star right as Mercury is stationing retrograde. So this is sort of another interesting handoff. We have Venus coming out of the beams and Mercury stationing retrograde all on the same day, August 23rd. It's just kind of a big day, right? It's kind of a big day of changes in the vibe, okay? And as we move forward off of this day, we're going to have the moon going out of bounds on the 24th through the 28th. So this is a period of time after all those changes have happened. We're probably going to feel a little bit like challenged physically, emotionally, things like that. And we're heading into the first quarter square. So you can see here on the 24th, as the moon moves into Sagittarius, we have a square between the sun and the moon. Okay, this is the Eight of Wands versus the Eight of Pentacles. There may be messages that are coming to you around this period of time where you want to take action, where you want to spread your vision out to the world. There's a spirit with that decan called Loimos, which is the god of plagues. I guess be careful with your health around this period of time, but also it's sort of a big picture versus the little picture type of experience where we need to keep in mind like our vision, our long-term vision, rather than getting so fixated on all the tiny details. So for you to be able to infuse a vision into matter, you got to know where you're going. You got to look up every once in a while. And this might be one of the moments to kind of look up and get your bearings. Also on the 24th, Mars is going to be trining Pluto. Okay, so here's Mars at 28 degrees of Virgo, trining Pluto at 28 degrees of Capricorn. This could be something where we are really being able to utilize our powers of change and transformation, where our ability to discern what stays and what goes is helping us to work with the need to shift our structures, whether it's politically or like physical structures in our life. That could be something that we're working on at this period of time too. Like we're able to really like cut out some of the things that have fallen into corruption. This is a great time to get rid of stuff. This would be a great time to clean out your closets or like your attic or something like that. Mars trine Pluto, that'll give you the strength and energy you need to make the changes to get rid of the superfluous stuff. This could be with a project too. You could say, this just isn't working. Mercury retrograde is be like, I got to review this process. Let's get rid of this part of it. You may not have to get rid of the whole thing, but maybe just a piece of it isn't working. So that's part of the Mars Pluto trine that we have. On the 27th, we have the Sun opposing Saturn. So as I talked about, as we said at the beginning of this happening, we have, starting around the 24th or so, we're going to start feeling that opposition to Saturn, okay? And it's going to perfect on the 27th. So here is the Sun at 3 degrees Virgo opposing Saturn at 3 degrees of Pisces. And this is a challenge to our process, right? This Saturn is really encouraging us to know our why and to not be so fixated on the how. The Sun in Virgo is going to be very, very fixated on the how. And we may run into a roadblock if we are so attached to a certain way of doing something that we lose sight of the meaning behind it. So be real. If you run into something that's kind of like, oh man, this is really frustrating, it may be Saturn just kind of saying, you know what, you don't have to pay such granular attention to this. You may have to do this in a certain different way, right? You may have to just kind of like accept the fact that it's not perfect or something like that, and just be okay with, having a less of a, system around it. Oftentimes Saturn and Pisces over this course of this, as it opposes all my Virgo planets, has said to me, you don't have to do this the same way that you've always done it. If you get kind of the essence of it, you'll be fine. Like, don't get so attached to doing it a certain way, because you could lose sight of the forest for the trees, type of thing. So that's what we're seeing here with the Sun opposite Saturn. Simultaneously on this day, we're going to see Mars move into Libra. Okay, so that's a big shift also. So not only do we have the Saturn Sun opposition, we have Mars in the first decan of Libra now in its exile. So this is a challenging position for Mars. All the discernment that we are getting from Mercury, and especially with Mercury being in really good shape, we're going to lose some of that as Mars moves into Libra. Now Mars is going to be hosted by retrograde Venus and Leo. It does witness that, so that's good. But this may be a shift in, like, we probably had our foot on the gas for a while, and now we may have to really make adjustments to other people's needs as Mars moves into Libra, which is not a comfortable place for Mars. The other thing that could happen is a lot of our conflicts, a lot of the stresses that we're feeling during Virgo season could play out in arguments within our relationship. So just be real careful that once Mars moves into Libra, that you're not projecting some of your anxiety out on your partner or something like that. Mars in the first decan of Libra, that first decan is really about the awareness of injustices and imbalances. And there's a spirit there called the Urines, where they were basically these like harpies that people prayed to in ancient Greek civilization to punish people that had gotten away with a crime. So if there's some sort of imbalance or injustice that you are experiencing, just try to chill out and don't let your ire be aroused too passionately. Like, you want to be able to call out things that aren't fair, but you need to do it in a way that isn't creating more destruction than grace. Okay, so that's my advice with Mars moving through Libra in that season. The good news is that that's temporary, and then once Mars moves into Scorpio, it's in its own domicile. It's much more powerful. So there may be some circuitous movement, some circular movement, but once we hit Mars in Scorpio, it's going to be a lot better, which that happens on the 12th of October. So hang in there for Mars ruled things and the Mars ruled area of your chart until October the 12th. On the 28th, we also are going to see, let's go to the 28th here. This is when Mercury moves under the beams of the sun. You can see now Mercury is within 15 degrees of the sun. So this is just maybe a lot of our mercurial discussions are going to be happening behind the scenes rather than totally visible. And Mercury is getting ready to go into the heart of the sun. So there may be some changes that happen in the Virgo area of your life and also in the Gemini area of your life, which Virgo is, or which Mercury is hosting. Uranus stations direct at 23 degrees of Taurus on that same day, and also stations direct on the 19th at the 19th degree of Taurus on the 27th of January. So a lot of the changes that have taken place in the Taurus area of our life, we're going to have to, they're up for review. Have the things that we've been doing been working? Have the remedies that we've been trying, the solutions to some of the challenges, whether they're forces of nature or whether they're in our personal lives, is it working? They're up for review. So that's what we're going through that for a number of months. And this isn't anything super out of the ordinary. The outer planets retrograde for a large portion of the year. Right now, Neptune's retrograde. Okay, so like it happens. It's just going to be more of maybe an internal change rather than an external one potentially. And then finally, oh my goodness, finally, we get to the end of the month and we have a full moon in Pisces. Okay. So here is the 7-degree Virgo sun opposing 7-degree Pisces moon. All right. So here is the moon is coming off a conjunction with Saturn. So the moon's co-present with Saturn. The sun's co-present with Mercury. So really strong energies co-present with the lights. The host of this moon will be Jupiter in Taurus, and Jupiter in Taurus is getting ready to retrograde at 15 degrees of Taurus on the 4th of September. So this is where Jupiter is starting to slow down to reverse direction. So there may be, again, some challenges to method versus essence, why versus how at this full moon in particular. Again, let yourself go with the flow at this full moon and let your generosity be the guide. Jupiter and your consistency, right? So as long as you show up and keep doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, that's going to lead you in the right direction. And if you err on the side of generosity, that also is probably going to help you get through this full moon period of time. The first aspect that happens after is an opposition with Mars in Libra. So this could be a little bit of a stickier full moon potentially, where our needs versus someone else's needs could come into conflict. So be aware of that, and we'll do a whole live stream on it. Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm so tired. We got to the end of this one, and now let's talk I-Ching for a second and an animal, and we'll go about our days, and I'll get some dinner, and we'll all recover from this Sun Pluto energy. So the hexagram I got for you, apropos, is exhaustion, number 47, oppression, being restricted, hardship, adversity, inner difficulty, feeling it dried up or in an impasse. And it's changing to hexagram number 29, which translates to the abyss, water, darkness, danger, despair, which requires courage and devotion, maintaining faith, pushing through the rapids and getting through to the other side. I think August is going to test our strength. It's going to test our patience. We're going to feel tired. We have a lot of changes coming, and we're going to have to pace ourselves. Line number 4 says he comes very slowly. This is one changing line. He comes very slowly, oppressed in a golden carriage. Humiliation, but it will end well. So in the I-Ching, the golden carriage is a sign of affluence and high social position. So this reminds me of something in the chat earlier. This is really about being held back from doing the right thing due to social circumstances or connections or expectations. We were talking about switching out lawns for like clover, and a lot of it, or for pollinator habitats. Some people are attached to having this very neat, pristine looking lawn. And sometimes when you put native pollinators, things in there, it looks a little messy for a little while. And we have to release our attachment to that, to like caring what other people think. Because as I've talked about on this channel, lawns were seen as a sign of affluence. And maybe in the past that worked, and maybe that was beneficial. But now it isn't really showing anything. It's showing that you're not in alignment with the times, and that we're going to overuse water or chemicals to try to maintain the appearance of affluence. So remember that your own inner values and what you stand for, this is going to help you to correct some kind of mistake and achieve your goal. Like again, we have the squares with Uranus, which is asking us to atone for mistakes in the past. So don't get distracted by the trappings of either the wealth that you have or newfound wealth, that you forget that it's important to reach out to people that are maybe not in the same status of you. It's important to rely on your strength of character. A lot of times, the test, as I talked about earlier, of Leo 2, is the test of success. What happens when you are maybe doing better than you have in the past? Like if Jupiter is expanding your resources, are you going to still maintain some of the values that got you there, rather than shifting to like maybe, trying to just do things so that you can flaunt your wealth around? It's a warning here. And we're heading into times where we might not know all the answers. And that's really what the abyss talks about. There's darkness involved. We have to have faith in what we can't see. This is something I've talked a lot about with Tanya recently, is the air age is challenging us to understand that there are dangers literally in the air that we can't see, like with the pandemic, sometimes with wildfire smoke, although we can see wildfire smoke, but also that the fact that we have to make changes to help people that we can't see, communities that we can't see. Sometimes if we're doing okay, we're like, I'm okay, and everyone else can go screw off or whatever. Well, we can't be like that, because our actions are going to have an enormous effect on others, and eventually that's going to circle back around to us. So that's another part of having faith in what you can't see, is that the actions that you're taking are not only changing your own environment, but are alleviating the suffering of others as well. And that brings me to the animal this week, which is the deer. I love getting the deer. I love interacting with deer in my woods that I take walks through regularly. Deer symbolizes gentleness. It's a great antidote for lion energy. The deer is food for a mountain lion. That's one of my animal spirits that I work with quite a bit. Being a Leo rising, I've done some animal spirit ceremonies where that was revealed to me as a mountain lion. Is sometimes, even though we have strength, we have to balance it out with gentleness and sensitivity. And the deer trusts its instincts. The deer is a lunar animal. It's trusting our senses to lead us in the right direction, even if we don't know the way. Deers create paths through the forest. They're pathfinders. So this deer is a message to simplify, to get peaceful, to start to quiet the mind, to trust your instincts, to lead you through the times of uncertainty, to find calmness and peace and live your truth as a pathfinder. Sometimes you may not see where you're necessarily going, but if your values are what's leading you, your intuition is what's leading you, that can really help you to move forward and to trust that where you're going is going to bring you to a positive space, even if you have to give something up in the moment. A lot of times before we make big breakthroughs, we have to let go of the old to make those big breakthroughs. And that's what we're going through as a society. We're having to let go of these old values, these old trappings of an old time that aren't serving us anymore. And maybe it feels like a loss in the beginning, but giving something up in the beginning is going to save us from having to lose so much more in the future, and maybe even bring us some real joy in the future as well. So my friends, that is what I have for you today for the month of August. What an interesting conversation that we have had today. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you for being here and being a wonderful audience. I appreciate all of you. If you're still here and you haven't unsubscribed, hopefully we can all do some great work together. I really appreciate all of your viewpoints and the different perspectives of how you see the world. Please keep it coming. Even if it's a controversial take, or if it's a take different than mine, I want to hear those takes. I want to be able to have those conversations. And by having the conversations, we learn how to meet in the middle, and we learn how to have compassion for one another. So thanks again for this time here today. And I will see you the next time, my friends. Have a good Leo season and Virgo season and August. And remember, try to be kind to yourself through this period of time. Be patient with yourself and be kind to others. And that's going to get us through the more difficult times. All right, my friends. Take care. Peace.